again, everybody, and welcome to the We Got a Long Way to Go and a Short Time to Get There edition of the Jim Cornette Experience, where I got off the internet for a couple of days and I let somebody else make some news. And to join me in recapping all this news, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's the Bernstein to my Woodward, the great Brian Last, everybody.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again, although I'm not sure if I would have lasted in a marriage to Nora Ephron, very similar to Carl Bernstein.
Well, my other option was to call you Squeaky Fromm after your chair.
And I don't think I'd be taking shots at the president either.
Well, and that would have made me Manson. So
yeah.
that was the not preferential choice. Anyway. Oh, so I tried to make myself happy this week, and I just ignored the internet since the website debacle of this past holiday weekend. It seems like so long ago and far away. Ah, so long ago and far away. I played around with you in the second show. Anyway, it was so long ago this past weekend with the website debacle. Where we got the coming soon banner crashed, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I decided that I was going to ignore the internet for a few days, and that was a happy time in my life. But then, when I have to do due diligence, I have to prepare. I've got to be a professional here. I had to prepare for this show, so I had to catch up on everything. And boy, howdy, a lot of shit went on this past week. But you will know, I think we've said this before. We've talked about this on the program. You will know, Brian Last, and so will the rest of the public at large, when I'm completely retired, because I will not have the interwebs in my home. I will not have a computer. I will not have the internet. I'll have cable TV the way God intended it. And a telephone plugged into the wall the way Alexander Graham Bell intended it. And that will be the sum total of my connection to the outside world. It's unnecessary. If you're not in business, and I think I dared you to do this one time before, but it's been ages. Maybe you've come up with a better argument. If you're not in business, if you're not actively, professionally making money and doing things like that, wheeling and dealing, kiss stealing, if you're not doing stuff, if you're just a retiree sitting on the porch on the rocking chair under the dogwood and your brand new Creekstone dry stacked bench, if you're just hanging out enjoying your golden years, what do you need the internet in your life for, Brian Last?
If I wanted to stream different programs to different monitors in the house.
You don't need that. That's something that you might choose to do, but you don't need that.
You don't need cable TV.
Well, but I choose to do that.
I choose to have the internet. I didn't know this is a battle of cable versus the internet.
I'm saying, do you need the internet for anything? Cable can replicate that. You can also have a large variety of DVDs and VHS tapes and beta tapes and 3/4-inch tapes and all kinds of media in your home, more than you could ever possibly watch for the rest of your life.
I don't need the internet in the same sense that I don't, need food. I could survive on just liquid. However, the internet and all of its parts certainly make life a lot easier, whether it's paying bills or buying stock or monitoring your kids in school or whatever it may be.
Wait a minute. Paying your bills, that's a good way to get your identity stolen. See, for every...
They can steal your identity just as easily by taking your mail.
Well, they can't get into my goddamn mailbox with that lock and the chain and the combination and the cameras. And
okay.
But nevertheless.
And chain of custody. Before it's in that mailbox or after it leaves that mailbox, you have no control over what happens.
Well, we've got to have some faith, Brian.
But Jim Cornette preaching faith. Interesting. Okay.
What I'm saying, you get on the internet, you pay your bills. You can simply write a check. Just write it out and stick it in that envelope, put a stamp on it, put it in the mailbox, and there you go. And you're fine, and it's worked for years and years. You don't need the internet for that. You don't need the internet. If you're retired and you're still having to monitor your kids in school, then you should have got your shit clipped a long time ago.
You may need the internet to track the check.
Well, it might be over in Teterboro. We never know where these things end up. But regardless, Earl of Teterboro, the point is you don't need the internet. You don't need the Twitter. You certainly don't need Twitter. You don't need the internet to conduct your finance. I conduct my financial empire the way that great moguls have done it since the days of J.P. Morgan. I either write a check, or I goddamn have a stooge do something, or I get on that invention that Alexander Graham Bell came up with, and my voice is carried through wires, solid wires, all the way from one place to the other to my destination.
Okay, I want to ask you a question. 2021 Jim Cornette, this version of you right here.
Yeah.
If I drop you into Louisville, Kentucky in 1985.
From how high a distance?
From a very low distance. You are injury-free. Big Bubba catches you and places you into a recliner.
Okay, right in there, in 1985.
Would you accept the change of cable TV? And again, I'm assuming 85. It may have been earlier, it may have been later. But would you have accepted cable TV, or would you have fought against it? This version of Jim Cornette now.
Accepted the cable TV in my home?
A man come into your house to drill a hole in the wall, to put a wire and a system that's going to bring you TV, and you're going to have problems Okay.
Yes, because it worked, and you knew how it operated. And it was dependable. It was we used to have utilities, Brian Last, that were dependable. The telephone, the telegraph, the telewrestler.
That was dependable.
They used to be able to build cars in Detroit, by God. They used to tell Jay Sharknado to put the Oliver Wendell Douglas patriotic music behind it. We used to be able to build things in this country, the refrigerators, the appliances that lasted for years and years. And it came with a book that told you how to operate it. And it was dependable, something you could rely on, not this fictitious interwebbery that's around in the air where we breathe, and people pulling servers away from you and things. I want to be served.
I don't know who's pulling a server away from people, but instead of the book, you would have the option to go to the website of whoever it was that sold you the item and seeing the official recommendation, the official instruction booklet online, or even going to YouTube and seeing one of these crackpot professionals doing a walkthrough, showing you what you would need to know. So there are wonderful alternatives.
I don't want to watch them. I don't want to bring them into my home, either in person or virtually, to tell me anything. I want to be able to fucking read the book and figure it out, or I don't want the goddamn thing.
When did technology turn on you?
Here's what happened. As soon as they came up with all this internet technology, that was another major item that you have to call people into your home to fix.
Like, I know you embraced the Game Boy, so at least up to 1990.
The Game Boy?
You had the Game Boy. You played Tetris on your Game Boy. So I know
yes.
You embraced technology.
I got one of those to have pass the time in the back seat of the car.
So you at least embrace some sort of technology, technological changes up to that point.
Because as long as I put batteries in that, it worked.
So it's the reliability that's the problem.
It's the reliability. Or lack thereof. The absence of reliability, responsibility, and culpability of these people. And the products that they sell and the service that they provide. Service in quotation marks. Why do you think there's so many memes out there of people setting fire to servers and throwing computers in the goddamn dumpster and taking fucking axes and bashing shit? Because there are a lot of people feel like I do, Brian Last. They don't like this technology. They don't trust it. Did you see on the news the other day, the government has already popped whoever makes that fucking Alexa business, that eavesdropping hockey puck. They record people's conversations in their house and then figure out which kind of advertising to send them based on what they're talking about. So see there, I'm telling you, it's not only got too smart for us, so we don't know how it works, but the people at the top that do know how it works can use it against us. And we got enough problems in this country with all the conspiracy theorists out there.
How do you feel about smart TVs, and do you still have a tube TV in your home?
No, I don't have a goddamn tube TV in my home because the last one that I had burnt out. And it was so heavy, I just threw it off the deck rather than trying to have somebody carry it down the stairs. But fuck these smart TVs, because you used to be able to just turn a goddamn television on and a picture would appear. Now you got to go through multiple steps. So what input would you like? What do you want, the fucking cock? Or do you want the cable? Or do you want the goddamn Tubi? Or not Tubi?
The what?
Whatever that Tubi is. Stace has a television down there. It's got 75 networks on it. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Tubi?
To be continued. I don't know.
To be continued. Anyway. So, yeah, but now I'm back on the internet because I had to prep for the show. And speaking of the internet and the moribund, Google that word, folks. It's a good one. JimCornette.com. Hotchkiss Featherbottom has done significant begging, pleading, sniveling, and various forms of things that required a lot of snot to be wiped up. Fortunately, he was not in my personal presence, but I could hear it. And we have discovered a few things I will give an update to on the crashing of JimCornette.com. It wasn't a bad site, and many people have said you got to see it on a brief moment when it was actually active before people found it again and shut it back down. You saw it. It's an attractive site. It's a fun site. It's good for you. It tastes good. It wasn't the site that had the problem. It wasn't, as some people said, oh, well, some fucking, Russian cosmonaut in a hut in the South Pacific has attacked you. No, we contacted the server people, and we weren't hacked. We were too popular. It was traffic. And Hotchkiss has admitted to the grievous error of, even after the words came out of my mouth, he underestimated my popularity. I believe his exact words to me were, "You're so big," and I said, "I'm aware of that, but let's talk about my popularity." And then we started talking about all the people that slammed me on the internet. So now he has requested, and may or may not have, an extension of his parole being deactivated while he speaks to and I quote, platform that specializes in major online retailers, because apparently that's what I am now. And not only for the traffic for the store, but the traffic for the site and the fucking places the places you can go on this website if it worked. It's amazing. The YouTube, the Patreon, the cameos, the podcasts. My God, it's a portal to entertainment, the likes of which that nobody has seen before, and they currently can't goddamn see it now. But he expects to tell me in the next few days as to whether or not that we can find somebody. I said, go find who did Taylor Swift's website. All those little 13-year-old kids with nothing else to do but get on the internet. They had to slam her a time or two. See how many times they crashed her. And let's make me comparable. So I wait to be convinced. I'm not promising anything, but he swears that this thing can actually be activated on such a way that people will not crash it, attempting to savor me, because I'm so savory. So JimCornette.com coming possibly soon, maybe. We don't fucking know. I ain't going to promise a goddamn thing. What are you snickering about over there, the Earl of Teterboro?
I'm not snickering about anything.
Yeah.
I don't use Teterboro anymore. I go out of Morristown.
Yeah, well, wasn't Teterboro involved in some way in the Amelia Earhart disappearance with either her or her co-pilot Fred Noonan? Hey, check that one out. Who else on a wrestling podcast this week will know the name of Amelia Earhart's co-pilot? Bastards. Did they not have contact at some point with Teterboro Airport on the way out or something?
I don't know.
Teterboro could have possibly been in that story. Let's check. if Teterboro has a historian, we might be spending more time.
Did you fly out of Teterboro?
I've heard about Teterboro. I never flew Teterboro.
It's overrated.
The smallest airport they got me in the New York greater metropolitan area, whatever it may be, was White Plains, which I did enjoy because there was only like 4 gates and you could park right across the street from the front door. And in those days, you could show up, 30 minutes before the plane and not even think you'd be late. Of course, I was always there an hour and a half early. I was there one day. Have you ever flown out of White Plains, New York?
I have not, no. Thankfully.
Well, well, there they are calling now, because I apparently left my rental car there. I have no idea who would that be? Hold on one second. I'm not going to buy anything, but I'm just fucking curious. Who are you? Well, they didn't say anything.
They hung up?
So we're going to fly out of... Are you all right?
What happened? Did they hang up?
No, it was just complete silence. I don't know. Anyway,
it's like Amelia Earhart.
Hold on, I'll tell you who. Wait a minute, let me see who the fuck that was. The caller ID says FRG, and the number's 502-49. I assume FRG would be some type of business that was attempting to sell me their products. Anyway, so we got to fly out of White Plains. And in the White Plains, New York airport, at least this was in 1996-7. I don't know if maybe they've rebuilt it. But it was a nice, clean place. And small, and you could get in and out easy, as I mentioned. But anyway, it had big glass skylights in the ticket area and the front of the terminal. You could see right up to the sky through the skylights. And I got there. I can't remember where we were flying now, but I got there, as I usually did, at least an hour and a half early. And, of course, Vince and Bruce and JR were coming. And, of course, they're going to be there at the last minute. And all of a sudden, this thunderstorm came rolling in, and I saw those clouds going on, and I'm sitting there trying to have a fucking Sprite and calm my nerves, and I see the dark clouds and then the thunder, and then I see the rain, and I'm like, fuck this shit, right? And wherever it was, I can't remember, so the story is kind of flat there, but I got back in my fucking car, pulled out, hit the interstate, and went to the goddamn TV that we were going to do, which probably somewhere between there and Pittsburgh, because it was doable, right? And of course, this was the night before we were going, so they didn't know whether I was going to be there until actually, I think that that may have been another time I beat them there to the hotel, because the time I've told before, when they canceled the World Series game because of the severe weather in New York that time, we were supposed to fly out to Indianapolis for the Buried Alive match with Undertaker and Mankind. And it was the day beforehand, and I saw the weather, and I saw it coming in, and I said, fuck this, I'm not getting on a plane. Jumped in my car and left Connecticut at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was in Indianapolis at 2 o'clock the next morning. JR and Vince and Bruce went to the airport, and I'd called JR at that point and told him I was going to drive. They went to the airport, and between the flights that were canceled, the flights that were delayed, and the flights that were rerouted, they ended up landing in Chicago and being bused to Indianapolis. They got in 3 hours after I did at 5 o'clock in the fucking morning. So it was, but anyway, White Plains. Where were we going with that?
Not White Plains.
Not White Plains. I've got a couple of emails before we start anything else that we're doing. This is from Kayla. Hi, Jim Cornette. My name is Kayla, and my boyfriend Dylan is obsessed with you and listens to your podcast for what seems like 900 hours each week. Kayla, it only seems like that because you hear my voice.
Imagine how it feels.
Well, there you go. Especially, can you imagine if it's 24 hours a day? There would be more than 24 hours a day. He's found a time machine. Anyway, Wednesday, September 8th is his 1-year sober anniversary. He has worked so hard and overcome so much, And I know that your podcast and wrestling in general have been so helpful at bringing him joy and entertainment in his sobriety. I'm trying to do something really special for him for his soberversary. And I know he would freak out if he heard from you. Freak out, man, guaranteed personified macho man. I'm wondering if there's any chance we could make that happen. I don't know. I might know somebody, Kayla. But anyway, she says, I'm not sure if you ever do anything like that or if this is too much of an ask, but I thought I'd give it a shot. Well, sometimes we do things like that, Kayla, and we just did do that. But congratulations, Dylan. And Kayla must love you because she's full of enthusiasm about this.
Good going. And keep it up.
Keep it up. And another email. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find it here. Now I've got it. See, that's another thing. Paper. Always have paper.
You can't find it. If you were on the internet, you would have pulled it right up.
No, I would. If I was on the internet, I'd be too busy trying to stick my foot through the screen. And also, since they changed my emails, I'm completely fucking lost on those anyway. As you well know, it just sent your goddamn email to what do they call it? Spam or Vienna sausage?
You may want to stretch first before you try to put your foot through the screen.
Yeah, anyway, all right. My name is Brian.
Oh, no.
No, stop it. It's not. It's a different email, and it's not you. My name is Brian, and this is serious. My name is Brian, and I'm from a small town in Alabama, and I just wanted to thank you and Brian. And I won't read this word for word, but Brian goes on to say his son was born in July of 2020, and he's got a rare genetic syndrome that less than 200 people in the world have. And Brian here has had to quit his job. It's been a stress on he and his wife because he's had to quit his job to take care of his son. And it's a reprieve from the stresses he's had in life. And he just wanted to thank us for doing. He's an honorary Kentucky colonel, by the way, and donates money to their charity every year. They have a charity also that helps it. At least years ago, it used to help, I think, exclusively kids. It may have branched out now. But anyway, and also best wishes to Drew in the United Kingdom, who sent us an email probably 3 weeks ago that I apologize that I just saw, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing again, but his mother, it's Drew in the UK, and your mother was ill in August, and we hope that things got better. If that lets you know who you are, we're thinking about you. Anyway, speaking of thinking about things, isn't it nice, Brian, that we finally have somebody back in charge of the country that thinks about things? Did you see President Joe Biden's speech yesterday?
I read about it. I saw commentators talk about it. I did not see it. I missed it. I was in the middle of stuff during the day.
And, well, you've only got 17 kids running around there. You got your own daycare center. What in the world? You should have plenty of spare time. But anyway, several people have actually emailed me and Twittered me over the last few weeks. Well, I don't see you talking about Joe Biden every day now like you did Donald Trump. There's no reason to. We no longer have a criminal, psychopathic lunatic running the country, so there's no reason to wake up every day in a state of massive apprehension at what might be happening. But when something good does happen, a milestone, I do like to recognize it. So again, why the majority of the country elected this man, he came out yesterday and announced what he's going to do, the new rulings, the regulations, mandates, laws, whatever he can do, has the power to do, for now, not only fighting COVID, but fighting the unvaccinated people, so that we can hopefully get past this at some point, because it's still a problem, but now it's a self-inflicted wound, because the vaccine may not prevent you from catching COVID, but it will prevent you from going to the hospital or dying in 99 point whatever % of the cases. But the hospitals are still full, and now kids are starting to get it, and it's starting to replicate, because if you give it a nice warm place to grow in all these unvaccinated bodies, then it just runs wild and creates variants that the rest of us are going to have to deal with. So he came out and in his grandfatherly way basically said, we're running out of patience for you unvaccinated fuckers, and you're gumming this shit up for the rest of us, so we're going to make it as hard as possible for you to avoid getting vaccinated. We know that you would rather take horse dewormer that you read about on Facebook, but how about this FDA-approved vaccination? And he did what good government is supposed to be about. He is making rules and regulations and using his authority to make people do shit for the public good. Do we have the obligation to humor stupid people's opinions in a public health crisis that involves all of us? At some point, do you need to have no patience for people who would rather, as I said, take horse dewormer than a vaccination because they don't like that their fucking idiot president got unelected? So anyway, he stood his ground on that, and he's also sending out millions and millions of doses of the vaccine. He's already prepaid for millions of booster doses. He's sending out a bunch of test kits, and the requirements of either having vaccinated employees or testing them every week is going to get burdensome and time-consuming for these companies, and they're going to just say, just everybody get a fucking shot so we don't have to close down or fucking breed panic or go through all this shit. Brian, aren't we allowed to say to the fucking dim-witted of the world, you can't have the tribbles? We know the tribbles are cute and furry, but they will replicate us out of existence, so you can't have the tribbles. Or maybe so the way that the woman phrased it in her sign that I saw on Twitter, if pregnancy is God's will, so is limp dick, so don't pay for Viagra either. Either one. What do you think?
I mean, it's hard to convince people who have determined that there's nothing that will convince them that the vaccine's okay, but there's a reason that before we send our kids to school, they have to get a bunch of vaccines. Mumps and measles. We can't just say, no, this is violating their independence, their freedom. No, they have to get this stuff so they don't kill the other kids and themselves.
I was going to ask you about that because you've got a lot more recent experience with it than I do. When I was a kid, they just cured smallpox. So I remember we had to get a shot for that. But what now do you actually have to the children to be so that they're not menaces to the other children and spreading disease? What are they already supposed to get vaccinated for?
To be honest with you, Suzanne would know it more than me because usually.
Oh, well, there you go.
Usually she's talking to the doctor while I take pictures.
But no, I remember measles. You take pictures of. Oh, geez, don't even.
I document my children's journey through life, and one day they will thank me. They'll say, "Oh my God, thank you! I know everything I ever did because you are a brilliant man."
I don't want to see a picture of me ever when I've ever been in a doctor's office. I usually have a worried look on my face. Anyway, there's measles. And there's smallpox. Well, I don't even think that's a thing anymore. But the point is you have to have vaccinations. When you used to have vaccinations to travel to certain parts of the world. And it may be a requirement or it may be optional now. But when you enter the military, you have to be vaccinated, do you not, against certain things? For the sake of being a fighting force. You're going to all these far-flung places. It's not new. It's just stupid because they're fucking idiots and their president lost and they think that Democrats eat babies and drink blood and they're lizard people and the horse dewormer and Joe Rogan and Rand Paul agree on shit. I don't know why. It's a bizarre world. But we need to start disregarding these people for the good of the health of the majority. And another thing, before I go, and we move on, that Joe Biden said that I like, the fucking lunatic governors. He's fed up with them. He said the governors of these states, and he's talking to Texas and Florida, and everybody knows it. The governors of these states that are hampering public health in a variety of ways need to stop it. They need to quit. And he's going to bypass them and go around them and or put the pressure on them to stop fucking with people. He said if they don't pay the teachers in these school districts that want the kids to wear masks so they don't spread shit because you can't vaccinate people under 12 yet. And the governors are saying, no, you can't mandate that kids have to wear masks or we're not going to pay you. Well, Biden said, well, we're going to pay you. The federal government will pay any teachers or anybody affiliated with the schools that want the kids to be safe by wearing masks, and these nutcase governors won't try to not to let them.
Can I ask you a question?
What?
If these governors are saying that they don't think there should be a mandate requiring children to wear masks in schools, do you think it's fair to say that these governors are actually pro-choice?
Well, yes, because they're getting to decide whether... See, here's the thing. Especially in Texas, they want to make abortion illegal, but they want to prevent the kids in schools from wearing masks, so they want to save the fictitious kids and kill the real ones. There's no consistency here. You're pro-choice if you want your kids to wear a mask or not, but you can't be pro-choice if you want to decide whether to have kids or not. None of this makes any sense. It's their feeble, conservative Republican minds. And at the root of it, don't get me started again, is what would God want us to do? But yet they're pro-choice except when they don't want you to have a choice about something, and then they're against your choice. Does that make any sense?
None.
My body, my choice. I'm not going to take a vaccine so I can continue to host a worldwide disease that is killing people by the hundreds of thousands.
You know, another thing, I'll bring up one point I did see. I saw Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on TV the other day. You know, I hadn't really thought too much about it and been very busy, so I haven't really been paying attention to everything in the news. So I listened to her, and she had a great point. Texas, I guess, is restricting abortions after 6 weeks. I could tell you from past relationships, very often by 6 weeks, women have no idea. They're used to missing their period by a couple. Well, I shouldn't say used to, but it's not completely uncommon. It's not a cause for, oh my God, I must be pregnant right away. So 6 weeks is, I mean,
that's their deal. That's why they do that. So they say, well, we didn't outlaw it completely. It's a game that they play because they are still running a country, despite the fact that they're a minority. 4 out of 10 of these people, now that's what basically has infected the country. 4 out of 10 people are infected with conservatism, republicanism, whatever they call it these days. But they're still running the country based on what God would have wanted the forefathers to do when he wrote the Constitution. And if you don't believe God wrote the Constitution, I'm sure one of them has video to prove it. They're nuts. And the shit they say don't make it it's like the Republicans are often booking modern wrestling. The shit doesn't have to make sense. They just want to fit the particular segment we're in. We're pro-choice in Seg 6, but we don't want anybody to have a choice in Seg 9. Anyway, so I'm proud of our president. So to change topics and subjects and complete direction of this conversation.
Thank God.
Have you seen the new Rick James documentary on Showtime?
I have not. I didn't even realize it was out. I have a biography of Rick James, but I want to see that. No.
Well, it's not like reading it is not like seeing it in living color on the cable TV. But the title of the program is Bitchin'. And the only reason that I saw it was because I was looking at the program guide. And I said, oh, shit. And I caught the initial airing like 20 minutes in and then recorded the repeat and watched it back from the start later on. But it's great. Lots of old footage and stuff of him and tales of the early days. And when he went to Toronto to get away from the draft and hung out with Neil Young and blah, blah, blah. But they have most of the Stone City band was, talked to for this, and a variety of people. Tina Marie is dead, obviously. I hated that. Boy, she was great. But anyway, it's just a great look, and I'm not even, they're not even paying us to do this. I loved it. I love Rick James. Amazing. Everything he wrote, you can tell instantly it's Rick James. He had amazing... shit sounded different, but at the same time, it all sounded like Rick James.
Even when he did other stuff, like when he produced the Temptations reunion, when they had all the members of the Temptations, it was produced by Rick James, sounded like Rick James, and he was also on the tracks.
Eddie Murphy, Tina Marie, the Mary Jane Girls, just everything. And they were all hits. He was amazing. And also he was crazy, as we all know. But a very interesting look at Rick James. I'm in the big time. I know success is all mine.
Did they have Linda Blair in the documentary?
Linda Blair was not in the documentary. Unfortunately, apparently she may have moved on from that relationship.
I have no idea why.
Now, all the people who didn't read Us magazine in 1983 are going to go, what are you talking about?
You know what I just saw that I thought was great? He's someone I've always been fascinated by, and I've read several books about him and various things he was involved with indirectly. But there's, I think, a 3-part John DeLorean documentary on Netflix that is fascinating. Great stuff. And they have so much archival footage, they're able to really tell the story.
But really, in all honesty, I don't think you can put John DeLorean's songwriting catalog up against Rick James.
I don't know. Coke to the Feds? That's a hit song anywhere you go. Shin Implant? That's another hit.
Diamond in the back, sunroof top, digging the scene with the doors on the top of the car. Oh.
Of course, the greatest part of the story, too, is after it all happens, who saves the day? Larry Flint. Comes in and saves the day. But anyway, anyone who wants to check it out, I forget the exact name of it, but it's on Netflix. A 3-part documentary on John DeLorean. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Stacey and I were on the way, more than 10 years ago, probably, to the Northeast for like a Ring of Honor show or something. And we were on Interstate 68. For those of you so inclined to be aware of the geography of West Virginia into Maryland, Interstate 68, out in the middle of bloody nowhere. And there on the side of the road, 20 miles from an exit, was a DeLorean sitting on the side of the road. Abandoned, even.
Wow. You never see that.
But especially
ever.
In the middle of goddamn, hoo-ha, West Virginia on the side of the interstate. But apparently it just quit right there, and they said, well, fuck it.
Jeez.
Anyway, so I've got back on the internet, and before we talk about the serious wrestling topics and subjects and the things that causing all the stir and controversy in the world today, I heard this and I blew snot. And I've got to say something about it. Have you heard what the latest that Shitstain, I will say his name for those of you, the uninitiated, the cult of Cornette knows who Shitstain is by reference, but for the uninitiated, the newer listeners, I'll say his name once, Vince Russo. Apparently, he has said with a straight face, out in public, if you will, to people, that the reason why Ron and Don Harris, the Harris brothers, who portrayed, as you'll remember, DOA, the Disciples of Apocalypse, Skull and 8-Ball, in their last run in the WWF. They were also the Bruise Brothers in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and in Memphis, they were also the Blue Brothers for a while in the WWF a few years before they were Skull and 8-Ball. They worked in TNA in the early days. As a matter of fact, Ron Harris was involved in production at TNA for quite a while behind the scenes.
They were Russo's guys. I mean, that was always their reputation after WWF, was everywhere Russo went, he brought the Harris twins with him.
Well, that's not exactly true, because they were very good friends with Jeff Jarrett because they'd worked for his dad, and they'd worked Memphis, and Ron Harris worked in a variety of capacities with Jeff Jarrett, doing what was the producing of some television programs, and they did security. Ron did a variety. So point is, it didn't have to just be because they were Russo's guys, because this is where I'm going with this. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And to be quite honest with you, the relationship that I had with Ron and Don Harris, the first thing they probably would have done was come to me and say, hey, did you hear this shit they asked us to do? He's trying to tell people the reason they were fired from the WWF, the Harris brothers, is because they wouldn't go in the ring in a match and actually beat the Road Warriors up. For real. Hawk and Animal. That somebody in the WWF had wanted the Harris brothers to go in a match with the Road Warriors. And I think the phrase was put a hit on them. Like that. They use that phrase in the Mafia. And the Marks use that phrase on the internet now about wrestling. But I can tell you that nobody ever might say we're going to fuck somebody up. But they never said we're going to put a hit on somebody. And I also double guarantee you that nobody ever fired anybody, much less Ron and Don Harris in the WWF, because they wouldn't beat somebody up in the ring. And I also guarantee you that since that would have had to happen 24 years ago, that if that had happened to begin with, that none of the participants would have ever been able to keep that fucking quiet. And have you ever heard that story before, Brian Last?
No, not ever. And I'm in my head trying to figure out when it could be. Obviously, I don't think the Road Warriors were there when they were the Blue Brothers. It would have been when they returned as DOA. And
yes,
the other part of the story that, I mean, you could dismiss every part of this, but
every part.
I don't know if I would take them over Hawk and Animal even in the late 90s.
Well, and that's why and to be honest, knowing the Harris boys, it looks are deceiving in both directions. It would have been a hell of a scrap. Let's put it that way. It would have been an interesting confrontation had it ever actually happened or had a chance in fucking hell of happening. It would have been an interesting confrontation that a lot of the boys in the business would have liked to sit down and watched. But no, I don't. Oh, God.
Who does he say gave the orders? Who did they get fired for ignoring?
That's not given. I assume it would have been him. He'd be the only one crazy enough to want to say something like that. I mean, again, there was no element of a shoot going on in the Montreal screw job that we've talked about so many times. It was a double cross, but nobody was sent into the ring specifically to commit bodily harm to somebody, especially for people of this particular temperament and persuasion. They would have all said it was, if Hawk and Animal had heard about it, they would have said something to to somebody. If the Bruise Brothers had been fired for it, I guarantee you, for not doing it, they would have said something to somebody. Neither Vince McMahon, nor Jim Ross, nor Bruce Pritchard, nor myself, nor Gerald Briscoe, nor Pat Patterson would have given any instruction like that in any serious fucking way. You know, there's no way to misconstrue anything that could be said to that. It is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
I'm looking here. I don't have all the facts and figures in front of me, but it appears they left the WWF. Their last match in WWF was a tag team match, losing to Ken Shamrock and Mankind, May 14th, 1999. So I guess it would have been around there that they ignored the request to attack the Road Warriors.
I have no fucking clue. And a lot of people are going, well, what about what Bradshaw and Simmons did with Public Enemy, right? And that is a completely different situation because nobody was instructed to do anything like that. Basically, Bradshaw and Simmons, I believe they've told the story, were standing there at Gorilla ready to go out when Public Enemy wanted to come up and change the match because they weren't happy with it and they wanted to do this and that, and it pissed them off, and they just went out and, in a working way, beat them up. If it had been a shoot, it wouldn't last as long as it did. They just took over, beat them up, gave them nothing, whacked them around with chairs. That's not even a shoot. That's just two guys. What was Public Enemy going to do? They could stay there and take it, or they could run off. It's not like they were going to make a fucking comeback on Bradshaw and Ron Simmons. but that wasn't a hit. That was two guys pissed off because these fucking Yahoo upstarts came in and wanted to change their fucking match, and they went into business for themselves.
You bring up Bradshaw. That reminds me, and I think now this is 3 times. Tell me, revisionist history, based on what you've been saying on the show.
Yeah.
It's this story. It was that the Brawl for All was created just so Bradshaw could get his ass kicked. And then it was the creation of the New Midnight Express. This is 3 straight stories that you've talked about where out of nowhere, all these years later, we're hearing a version of events that not only no one ever heard before, but in some cases, versions of events that are chronological impossibilities.
But in the alternate universe that our friend Shitstain lives in, anything is possible. And folks, I got to admit, if it would be great if only there was a way where you could live in your own reality, where you could create your own pictures of things that you would like to have happened in the past. Wait a minute. There is, folks, if you want to create your own reality and live in it, go to the folks at Paint Your Life. We've talked about them. You can get professional hand-painted portraits created from any photograph or combination of photographs at an affordable price from a team of world-class artists. You can receive your portrait in as little as 2 weeks. If you want to imagine that you were able to tell big bad wrestlers to go fight with each other, then just have a painting made of Ron and Don Harris beating up Hawk and Animal. Or if you live in the real world and you want to have pictures of your family or your close friends or your pets or your favorite places, Paint Your Life is the place to go. And right now, at paintyourlife.com, there's no risk. If you don't love the final painting, your money is refunded. And right now, for this limited time, only until Vince Russo comes to his senses. Wait a minute. That time is unlimited. You can get 20% off your painting. That's right, 20% off and free shipping if you text the word DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, to 64,000. That's 64 with 3 zeros behind it. DRIVE to 64,000, 20% off and free shipping on a custom portrait from paintyourlife.com. Celebrate the moments that matter most. Terms apply. Available at paintyourlife.com/terms.
And the wonderful thing is the moments can be real or imagined.
Let your imaginations run wild, folks. Combine generations. Just throw off the bonds of the laws of space and time. Anything you can imagine can be done, courtesy of either Shitstain or Paint Your Life. Oh, speaking of taking a trip back in time, it's the time of year again, Brian, where we get to revisit incredible moments. Incredible may not be the right word. In wrestling history, the dark side of the ring. The second half of season 3 is debuting this coming week, Thursday night, September 16th on Vice TV, with the episode on the plane ride from hell. What do you think?
Ooh.
From what I have heard, many people in the wrestling industry will look like 14-year-old children without adult supervision on the night before prom as a result of this television program. But first of all, Evan Husney and Jason Eisner, the creators of the same series, Dark Side of the Ring, we've had them on the show before. They're going to be on The Experience next week, which will be one day late. We might as well tell them now, Brian, because my birthday is on September 17th. I'm going to be 60 years old, and on that milestone, I'm not going to sit here and talk about wrestling for 4 or 5 hours. So we're going to record on the 18th, and it'll be airing on the 19th. But Jason and Evan will be on to talk about this coming season and react to the plane ride episode that debuts on Thursday night. But also this season, the shows on Chris Kanyon, Luna Vachon, the steroid trial, which I understand is going to be a corker, Onita and FMW, XPW, which should show the full unsavoriness of the people involved in that whole fiasco. And my favorite, Bruiser Bedlam, will be profiled. Johnny K9, whatever name you want to use for him, will be profiled on one of the episodes this coming season. So we're going to have some fun. What else on programming? I said, so next week, the experience is going to be one day late again for my birthday. And goddamn, I'm only going to be 60 once, folks. So give me a break. Is the drive-through regular this week?
Regular is an interesting word. I believe the drive-through will be out this week on Tuesday.
Well, good. That's regular.
I think so. I forget what regular is, actually.
What are we going to talk about? Well, we got Rampage from Friday night and whatever else anybody does crazy or stupid over the next few days. We'll figure that out. So there's
and questions. People want to hear their questions answered.
Yes. And I'd like somebody besides Charlie from Starkville to send one or two in.
And by the way, once again, I got to bring up, because it was so brilliant that I thought about it again. The idea that we had As Tears Go By with the lyrics for Why'd You Do It by Marianne Faithfull is one of the milestone moments in the history of the drive-thru.
It's more like a millstone that hangs around our neck. Anyway, speaking of millstones around the neck, when you've really got trouble when you've got Mick Foley, the nicest human being in the wrestling industry, actually having to come out and say, WWE, we've got a problem. You've heard about his video. It was like a 1.5-minute statement. But boy, I mean, I'm not saying that Mick is a WWE apologist. I'm saying that Mick is nice to everybody, and Mick doesn't want to offend people, and Mick is diplomatic, and Mick sees every side of an issue, and Mick wants to just spread positivity, right? Mick is a positive guy. He's not like the Sheik positive. He's not like the Iron Sheik positive. Oh, positive, good. No Sheik, positive, bad. Telephone ringing, bad. I have no idea. And they just, yeah, there we go. Got that taken care of. Anyway. Right. So anyway, the point is he's positive. Mick is. But he put out a video, a statement just saying, WWE, we've got a problem. And the gist of his statement was that young wrestlers do not trust the WWE with their careers anymore. He said it wasn't like that when you were in charge of mine, Vince, because Vince McMahon did make. It was a roundabout way to do it, and Mick obviously had the talent and carried the ball, but Vince made him a star, a bigger star than he was. Vince made a lot of guys in that era bigger stars than they had been. But now he's saying, and we've been talking about, look at this exodus. My God, it started to turn into lemmings going over the edge, but they're going to the promised land. They're escaping Devil's Island. People don't trust the WWE with their careers anymore because they get plugged into being an interchangeable character in this, Disney on Parade in a wrestling ring show they're doing over there. And the wrestling war is getting more interesting because one side keeps blowing up its own ammunition dump. What do you think?
I think, in terms of Mick Foley, I didn't see the statement. I only read about it. Glad that he finally came to this conclusion right after All Out, that WWE is a problem. It's been apparent for a while there's been a big problem. It's just now everyone is noticing it, and now it's unavoidable, and we'll talk about it later, as more stories break about guys potentially coming up, their contracts coming up, this story's not going to end. This is going to be a continuing story now for the next several months at least. If I was a young wrestler, what would really be the pitch for WWE to me? It would be lots of money, and if things work out, more money than I likely would ever imagine, unless I was going to go into business. It would be WrestleMania. Hey, I saw that as a kid, and there's another part of the pitch. I always dreamed of being in WWE. I always wanted to go there. That's it. What are the negatives? Everyone knows the reputation of Vince and creative. And I'm not, this is where you and I differ. I'm against there being writers, period, but I don't blame the writers for doing a show catered to what Vince wants. That's where I blame Vince, and that's the system. And guys have seen people get eaten up by NXT. There are guys who loved Paul Levesque when they were there. They were in NXT. They were his guys. And when they got to the main roster, they thought a completely different thing about him. And they never felt the same way about him. Not that they hate him or anything, but they didn't trust him with their careers. That's him. And then there's Vince. Guys don't trust Bruce and Johnny Ace. The guys who trusted Bruce are gone. All those guys, the fucking Texas drinkers, The Undertaker and Bradshaw, they're all gone.
Sounds like a roller derby
it's
team.
One of the guys who would get bombed with Bruce. They're all gone. The guys there today, modern wrestlers, and I'm not even saying this is a shot at Bruce, but it's true. It's a reality. You could talk to guys in fucking MLW or Impact or WWE. They don't want to hear from Bruce. They don't want to work with Bruce. And it's all part of a big system. And then you got a guy like Nick Khan making the comments like he's making. They're treating wrestlers like they're widgets, replaceable items. They could just create new stars. They could just find anybody off the street who ever had an interest in being a wrestler and get them in the door. Nothing about passion or care about the craft or anything else. And if I was a young wrestler and you said, you can go to WWE and they believe in you, they want to send you to NXT for a year, but they think you'll be on the main roster. Or if you tell me I can go to AEW and make, let's just say, and we know about the contracts, but let's just say, for this example, I'll make 80% of the money I would make in WWE off the bat in AEW, but I know I'll enjoy working there.
Less stress.
Less stress. I'll get to work with guys I like. Everyone will be happy backstage. We could say whatever we want about the All Friends and hiring the wrong people. It's all true, but that has contributed to a very happy working environment. You don't get that in WWE. Did I just hear they're cutting back on catering? Did I hear that recently?
I tell you what, no, to be honest with you, I told this story when I went to the Hall of Fame deal 4 years ago. I said, what the fuck? The catering's a 5-star goddamn steakhouse now. I don't see that many condiments at a fucking grocery store. If that was the first thing I would have, instead of cutting wrestlers, I'd have cut back on some of the catering. It was goddamn ludicrous. But here's the thing. You said, well, you don't think there should be writers. We agree on that, but you don't blame the writers for writing for what Vince wants. And I guess you can't. And the problem then is also that the way that, from what I hear of the access to people, you just, who was it that just did an interview that I read this morning on the internet that said, it was that Jake Atlas, said, well, I really never talked to John Laryngitis, except he called me and it was a 20-second conversation where he just told me they were exercising the option to fucking fire me. How the fuck do you make that a 20-second conversation? You can't even fucking give a guy 2 minutes when you're firing him. But he said that he'd wanted a meeting with Vince, or he'd wanted a meeting with somebody else. And I see other people say, well, we waited for, 6 months, but we never got to talk to Vince. The whole hierarchy there has changed. And apparently now it's so hard for the wrestlers to talk to anybody of any authority. And you got a bunch of writers who are then thrown in a room with Vince McMahon and they're shaking like dog shit and peach seeds. We didn't have that in the 90s or in the 80s. They didn't have that before I was there. And the way that Vince was sold things, this is starting to come to light, I guess, is what I'm trying to say is you had guys that had access to Vince, that could sell Vince on shit, that knew how to talk to Vince and had wrestling business backgrounds, so weren't intimidated to speak to Vince. And so that doesn't mean that everything that happened back in those days was Vince's idea either, but you had people like Jim Ross, Pat Patterson, myself, even Bruce. We could talk to Vince anytime we wanted. We didn't have to wait for a meeting, and we didn't have to, I'm sorry, but we were farting at Vince's fucking dining room table because it was a wrestling booking meeting back then in those days. Even if it was with Vince, it was wrestling booking. People were farting and telling shit jokes and fucking hanging around in scrummy clothes. And now they have writers that have to go through other writers to go in and pitch shit to Vince, who takes some notes and fucking wanders off. And if you had those guys and the Briscoes and the Pattersons and the JRs and the entire wrestling infrastructure that he had that had access to Vince and could pitch him shit, but also could talk to him wrestling business to wrestling business as normal human beings, instead of being scared he's going to fire you every 3 seconds because there's 30 of you and you went to college somewhere and he don't know who the fuck you are. A lot of shit got fed to Vince that he could assimilate and use back then to make people stars. And now apparently it's just going on whatever attention span he's got, and none of these people have the relationship with him that they can go up and say, Vince, this fucking sucks. You know what we need to do with this fucking guy?
He's an old man with a bad memory.
Okay, but I'm just saying,
the guys aren't going to have that relationship with him.
In those days, we could go up, and I'm not saying Taka Michinoku had regular audiences with the Pope or Vince McMahon, and you hear the tales in the 80s, guys would wait at TV all day for hours to be into Vince's office, but eventually they'd get there. But you could go up to Vince and use the exact phrase, Vince, this is the fucking shit's going on here. Can we fucking do something with this? And he'd say, okay, what do you got? Because it was the wrestling business and you're talking to people. Yes, he's the boss. But now everybody's like, sir, please, sir, may I have some more time to tell you about my new ideas? What the fuck? So I think we're seeing that difference. Anybody with authority is insulated by layers and layers of assistants. And remember, I said when I went with the Hall of Fame, Vince had 2 assistants just in charge of bringing his clothes over so he could pick what he wanted to wear. They're running and fetching and carrying. You can't get to the people in charge. There's an endless array of producers. And I'm not saying that those people are bad either, and some of them are ex-wrestling talents. But, my God, it's too big and it's too removed from whether you want to look at Vince as the booker or Vince as the director of the major motion picture or Vince as the producer of the album. It gets too far away from the top and the vision was supported by a small core of talented musicians or the artist or whatever, but now everybody's got a shot at this and there's 85 screenwriters. So it's a goddamn mess. Yeah. And that explains a lot that Vince, we've always said that Vince's strong point was he was an editor. He'd take everything that was bombarded at him, but some way he'd find the direction and he'd put a little bit of it into effect. And in those days, he won more than he lost. So now are we to assume that Vince has lost it, which may very well be true? He's almost fucking 80. Or is it also that the access of people who had good wrestling ideas to him now is so limited, and so there's such a distance put there that you can't get it across to him, or he might do it?
Yes, on both counts.
Well, there you go. I just diagnosed it.
And the other thing too is if someone actually did have that access and met with him and he agreed with it, and then a few minutes later, he's in that room with Bruce or Johnny Ace, and all of a sudden, he forgets everything he just spoke about with the wrestler, and everything changes. But let me ask you a question.
Well, okay, go ahead.
For this example, and I know WWE said they are no longer going to scout indie talent, to which I say, bullshit, and I'll tell you why. Let's just say for this example, Jim, you are a wrestler, you're 22 years old, and you have the look of Damian Priest, which is why I say bullshit, because if that guy showed up on the indies, WWE would be all over it.
Yeah.
And you're 22 years old, young guy. In the future, people tell you, oh my God, one day you're going to main event WrestleMania. So you're hearing it. And you got 2 offers on the table. One of them's from WWE. And maybe, just maybe they'll want you enough that you get to meet Vince when you sign, but you may just have to go through the other people. Or you have AEW, not as much money guaranteed, or maybe even more money than WWE, and you have a good conversation with Tony, and you like the agents, and everyone there is having a good time, And everything we know and all things being equal, if you were that young wrestler, what do? You have an offer on the table from both companies.
I think at some point I would probably drive myself completely insane trying to make that choice, because what you have is a choice between going to work for a place where you will be one person in an assembly line in a giant factory, and as you said, interchangeable. You're part of the cast of a touring company and you can easily be replaced, or you can go and play with all of your friends and never get your finishing school education because everything will be allowed and nobody wants to fucking turn down any ideas and nobody wants to make anybody feel bad. And I just wish that there was some happy medium, not too hot, not too cold, the porridge that would be just right between these two opposite ends of the spectrum.
But if you were that young wrestler.
But if I was that young, here's the thing. If I was that young wrestler, I would pick AEW. Probably if I was the young me, I would still go with the WWE because I would want the finishing school fucking education.
I don't think their finishing school is up to date anymore. You know, Motown stopped using their finishing school after a while because it was out of date. Well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, let's bring something else into the conversation here, because we'll jump ahead to another subject because it relates to this after we've gotten this far, the whole Adam Cole situation. But what was the statement you were about to make? And then we'll bring that up.
The only thing I was going to say before was I agree with you, and a lot of AEW has been just silly crap. However, if you are a 22-year-old young wrestler and you're serious about it and you like serious stuff more than the silly stuff, if you want to be able to do athletic stuff but also wrestle a serious style, in AEW you have a chance to have that segment on the show even if there's a bunch of shit around it. In WWE, you know what you're going to be doing on that show.
Yeah.
You know you're going to hate what you're doing. You just know it. Every young wrestler in the fucking business knows if I go to WWE, I'm going to enjoy myself pretty much until I get to the main roster, and then everything changes. And I'm going to be handed scripts with stupid shit. And there's going to be all sorts of weird fucking high school-like cliques amongst these adults. And everyone knows what it's like. And I don't think a single wrestler in the business would choose WWE over AEW right now, unless they're just not thinking.
Well, this brings up another interesting defection. Adam Cole. And now reasons for that are coming to light. Hey, we've been talking for the past few weeks about how they're running these people off, and we kept seeing, well, you know, the last time we saw Big Show on television, he was belittled and made to look like a fucking moron. And last time we saw Mark Henry until he was belittled and made boom, boom, boom. And then the creative pitches for the various talent that they apparently supposedly wanted to keep with these ideas. Adam Cole's idea now has been revealed. The way that they wanted to use Adam Cole in the WWE going forward, if he was to sign his new contract, was to be Keith Lee's manager. Not only to be Keith Lee's manager, if these reports that we are hearing, and I've heard no denials from Adam Cole, have you on this? But if the reports that we are hearing are correct, they wanted him to change his name, apparently, I guess because Michael Cole is an announcer. They didn't want him to think that anybody to think that he was Michael Cole's illegitimate son. Wanted him to change his name, even though he'd been on a television program produced by their company as a top star for the previous 5 years. And they wanted him to manage Keith Lee. Not be a wrestler, be a manager. Have I summarized that report correctly?
I believe so. I believe that was the reported pitch to Adam Cole. I'm uncertain if it was from Vince himself or from Bruce Pritchard, but that is the story.
Do you remember? Well, you're not going to have to remember because we're going to play a clip here in a second. But this tickled me because this is, again, the way two different people who have both pitched numerous ideas to Vince McMahon, interpreted how to best pitch Adam Cole to Vince McMahon. Because Bruce and I have both many times pitched things to Vince, some of which he accepted, many more of which he did not. But it shows the difference. And instead of me recapping it and getting it wrong or telling it wrong or whatever, we're just going to go back to, I don't even remember how long ago this was. It was a couple months ago. We were talking about Cole's contract. We first found out it was coming up or there might be some issues or whatever. But I said, if I was trying to sell Adam Cole to Vince McMahon, because I knew that Vince would see he was small, that would be the first thing Vince would fixate on. So this is how I would sell Adam Cole to Vince McMahon to buy him time to let his other talents shine and show what he could do. Can we cue Jay Sharknado or somebody? Is Kippelman on this? Who's doing this today? Can we get them to put that clip in there and then we'll come back?
We will find out right now. Jim, a lot of questions have come in about a topic we talked about just recently on the show, I think last week. Adam Cole and his contractual situation with WWE and NXT and what we perceive, what we think would be Vince McMahon's views of Adam Cole. And I know you had some thoughts about Adam Cole and I guess how he could be used or how he could be sold.
Well, come out and say it. You know, we were talking off the air and you said, well, hey, you know, Adam Cole's another guy that he's honestly, as long as Vince McMahon is in charge, is not going to be brought up to main event WrestleMania, even though he's got all the talent. And I said, for one thing, a lot of people don't necessarily want to argue with Vince when they know he's either got his mind made up or he's leaning in a certain direction. The more often that you disagree with Vince McMahon, the more likely he is not to want to suffer you in his presence. And I was one of the only ones that just didn't give a shit because I was cranky and I was like, no, listen to this. But I think that anybody that Vince trusts could sell Adam Cole to Vince if they did it right, because what you have to do is draw parallels or straight lines or whatever to something that Vince has enjoyed, has seen work, the logic and the way he thinks that it's something will work. You have to equate it there, and then you give a guy a chance to do what he does and prove Vince wrong to Vince in his mind without anybody telling Vince he was wrong. If that makes any sense. Remember, he was wrong about Mick Foley. He didn't want to hire Mick Foley, and then he wanted to make him Mason the Mutilator or whatever. But Mick had enough people trying to pitch for him and let him do things to show Vince how good he was that Vince would like, that he got the opportunity to, and dodged a few of those stumbling blocks along the way. And then once Vince saw the creativity behind the guy and that he wasn't just the bump guy or the guy with the bad body or whatever, then he became a huge fan of Mick Foley. Adam Cole can work his ass off. Adam Cole can have tremendous matches. Adam Cole's technical work and his selling and all the things that go into the in-ring performance are excellent. Adam Cole also looks like an athlete. Just unfortunately, he looks like a small athlete. But he also looks like a rock star because he's a handsome guy. And he's got the hair and he's got the look and his promos. He takes that horse shit, all that happy horse shit, as Ole Anderson would say, that they give these guys to say in these long, drawn-out, dramatic stories, and somehow he verbalizes these things and crows and gets himself over in a matter that it makes it look natural that he's saying these things, that he might be the guy saying this rather than he's saying something somebody told him to say. He had success with being the centerpiece of a group of heels that could talk somewhat, but that Cole was doing primarily the talking, and he was the fucking boss of that group. He's got a physical charisma that obviously people like to watch him and get over, and the Adam Cole Bay thing with the fucking the entrance and the audience participation. The only thing that Adam Cole is missing is, instead of being 6'2" and 230 pounds, he's 5'10" and is he 200? Whatever. But he looks like a professional athlete, again, just a small one. So you don't go up and tell Vince, this guy's the next Ric Flair. Vince, this guy is the greatest worker. Even though it might be true that he's the greatest worker in the fucking on the roster, Vince don't care, because he's trying to look at him in a pay-per-view main event or a WrestleMania main event, the Big Show, whatever. But who's Vince familiar with in the past? Here's one thing. Remember, you're actually too young, but this may have been a thing even when you started watching wrestling. But when Roddy Piper first entered the WWF, at that time, was it still the WWF? 82? Well, no, it wasn't.
In 79, when he went up there, was the WWF.
Well, when he went up there the first time.
Yeah.
It was still the WWF. But Piper was put into the position, something similar to like when they got him into Atlanta by being the commentator and then worked him into, he was a wrestler, but you saw him as a commentator. Piper was in what they used to call the player coach position. He wasn't a manager per se. He was a wrestler and acknowledged as a wrestler, but he also had guys around him that he did the talking for. And obviously, the first WrestleMania, Roddy Piper was the key to the heel team. And, in various places, didn't they do that something like that in Los Angeles, too, when he had a group? And he definitely had a group in Portland, didn't he? For a while there. Am I thinking incorrectly? The point is, the knock on Piper when he got into business at first, before he got bigger, and he was bigger than Adam Cole, but he was still small for that era. So they made him sort of a player coach to where he's got heels around him. The point is, I would draw one of those parallels. I'd say, Vince, this guy can talk his ass off. He can get some heat. He's got that cocky personality. He can work, but we don't need to feature him as a wrestler. Put him on TV in 5-minute matches with guys that are complete flunkies and let him win and crow about it. And let people be going, oh, he's fucking beating nobodies. What the fuck? Meanwhile, he's still getting wins. He's still on TV. And find two heels, not a tag team, but just two other heels that Vince kind of cares about, but he's knocked them because they can't talk. And is there any way that we can fit them into Adam Cole's periphery, like the Undisputed Era were? Now, they had an advantage because those guys were all friends beforehand. They were all in Ring of Honor, and they fit together. But can you find two other heels that Vince has sold on? Bigger guys, not giant, don't have to be giants, but bigger guys that can't talk. That's the missing part of their puzzle. And suddenly they form a little friendship. And then is it the modern day Ernie Ladd and Ivan Koloff and superstar Billy Graham, the trilogy of main event heel terror? Then you've given Adam Cole a spot to where he can be featured as a wrestler, and you've given Vince a reason to nullify some of his drawbacks because he's helping to get heat on these two other guys that he's in this group with, and see if you can get three fucking heels over. But if not, you've given, and then the time that Adam Cole gets in the ring against top guys is when he needs to get his fucking ass kicked. But you keep putting that off as long as possible, because as long as they can't shut that mouth, that little prick's going to keep on talking, and he escapes and gets away from it. You stall for time until Adam Cole, as a talent, as a human being, as a good employee, and doing the things that he does well, could grow on Vince. That's, I think, the best way to get somebody. I mean, anybody else that size, I'd say don't even fucking try. Don't die on that hill, as Jim Ross would say. But Adam Cole is so talented, you want to use a guy like that regardless of the fact that he just genetically is not fucking 235 pounds.
Here's the problem. Unless Vince in his head and publicly says that he's 100% gung-ho for Adam Cole, he's going to have Bruce in one ear and Laurinaitis in the other one telling him every reason he shouldn't like Adam Cole.
Oh, I'm not saying that they wouldn't do that, because they're, that's the thing, is that they don't want to take a chance on being wrong about anything, even if they would be right and Vince just would see it as wrong. They don't want to take a chance on being wrong. And I mean, Laurinaitis probably, I think Bruce could see a better chance of seeing Adam Cole's talent and just not want to actually get heat over expressing that opinion. I think Laurinaitis probably would think that Cole's just too small and blah, 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 because Laurinaitis in 2004, 2005 with OVW, he's trying to get me to send him Sean O'Haire and Mark Jindrak as soon as humanly possible. I said, I don't think I will live long enough for Mark Jindrak and Sean O'Haire to be any better than these other 15 guys, the Bashams and the Jeters and the Dinsmores and the et cetera that we've got. But because they were tall guys with good bodies and in Jindrak's shape, not much physique and 2 left feet, he identified with them because they reminded him of him. But I'm just saying, I could sell Vince if nobody else was fighting me. I could explain to Vince how he could use Adam Cole, but everybody else would be fighting it. So, that's why I'm not there trying to convince Vince of anything anymore. Well, that was about a month ago, I guess, on the show at this point. And so basically what I was trying to get across in summation was that I thought the best way to present Adam to Vince McMahon was to treat him like Roddy Piper, to find a couple of bigger guys, bigger heels that Vince kind of liked, but that weren't the greatest promos, and make them an association, put him with them, not as a tag team, not as a manager necessarily, but the player coach like Piper, to be a group. He was just in the fucking focus of a group of 4 guys in NXT. Well, he would be the focus of a group of 3 guys, and they'd be individuals out doing the things they wanted to do, but most of the attention would go on Adam Cole in this group, and he would be the straw that stirred the drink in it. So I wanted to make Adam Cole Roddy Piper, and Bruce wanted to make him Leo Rush. No wonder he fucking left. That was probably, I can see Vince saying, well, we don't have anything for him, pal. See if he wants to be a manager. So then they'll just say, well, you want to be a manager? Well, if not, okay, we'll see you later. Whatever. But that's insane. That's just slapping a guy in the face. That's just telling him, well, you've performed at a high level in every aspect of what you've done for the past 5 years for one of our companies. So now we want to bring you to the supposed bigger one, change everything that you've done, and don't let you wrestle anymore, even though you're great at it, because we want you to be a manager of a guy that's in his mid-30s that we've been iffy at best on and may or may not ever fucking get over.
That's the WWE way.
So there, again, and I'm not accusing Bruce of cribbing my ideas and dumbing them down. I'm not saying that he heard me. I'm saying that probably independently of hearing anything that I just said there, he came up with the same thought. Well, how are we going to sell this guy to Vince? But he went that route instead of the one that I went, which shows you the different ways sometimes people would pitch ideas about the same guy.
So again, let me ask you, if you were Adam Cole, is there any way in the world you would have re-signed with WWE?
No, not a chance in the world. But then, he's going to have other issues where he is, and we'll talk about that later on in the program. It's just, and did I hear they wanted him to cut his hair? Or was that just something that somebody added?
I think that was a rumor, but it was not confirmed.
Rumor, not a confirmation. But they do that a lot, They want these guys have goddamn hair like rock and roll stars, and they want them to look like 40-year-old truck drivers.
I understand it's called the OVW.
Yeah, it's the OVW buzz cut. And I guess that's maybe some kind of frustration from these, guys that aren't very attractive, that's on the staff somewhere that are probably going bald, probably losing their hair, and instead of doing something about it, they want to take it out on these young guys that have these great heads of hair. That's why, folks, You ought to, if you're in any way troubled with hair loss, check into the fine folks at Keeps. That way you won't be mad and cranky and in bad moods and trying to take it out on other people when you lose all your hair, because at Keeps, they offer you a simple, stress-free way to keep your hair with convenient virtual doctor consultations and medications delivered straight to your door every 3 months. You don't have to leave your home. As a matter of fact, if you give them a special code, the postman will knock, and then you can just open the door and he'll pitch it right in. You don't even need to go out on the porch. Low-cost treatments start at just $10 a month because they offer the generic versions of all the finest hair loss products with discreet packaging. You won't be able to tell this package from your wife's dildo. It's discreet. You can't tell what's in it. And they've got more 5-star reviews than any of the competitors, folks. But prevention is the key, and treatments can take 4 to 6 months to see results. So act fast. This is one thing that dildos have an advantage over Keeps. They don't take as long to work. But if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to Keeps.com. That's Keeps, Keeps.com/JCE to receive your first month of treatment for free. Keeps.com/JCE, your first month's treatment for free. Keep hair on that thing. Your head, that is, not your wife's dildo.
Our wonderful client is just as effective as a dildo, for the record.
Yeah,
Support them today.
Actually, they're more effective than dildos when it comes to preventing hair loss.
You said less before.
No, you heard it completely backwards.
Keeps.com/JCE.
Well, apparently another person the WWE is not going to be able to keep a hold of is Kevin Owens. His contract is now up earlier than anyone, apparently, than even he thought. How is this possible? He didn't know when his contract was up. They didn't know when his contract was up. It's up at the end of the year, not another year from now. He said in 2018 he signed a 5-year deal. Now they're saying, I heard someone say that some contracts were restructured due to the pandemic. And they're just now figuring out, I guess he's going to be up by December or January thereabouts. What the fuck is going on here?
Has there ever been a point like this? Well, the answer is no. There's never been a point like this in WWE history where there's been so many issues with contracts. You know, the Jeff Jarrett issue that everyone always talks about, where he held up the company for money. That was a rare issue. I mean, it didn't happen all the time where a guy's contract came up and no one was prepared for it. There hasn't been a situation like that, but Adam Cole's contract came up earlier than they thought. Now Kevin Owens, or we should just start calling him Kevin Steen again. I have a feeling I'll put money on this in January or February. Kill Steen Kill will be the #1 selling t-shirt at Pro Wrestling Tees. But they're having some weird issues over there they've never had before.
And it's not even like it's with people totally unrelated to the executive vice presidents of the opposing company. These are some of their best friends, for fuck's sake. People they have history with. It's a pipeline. I'm not saying that they should immediately go in and interact on the air. I'm saying that the people they have history with, as far as being friends, being close, doing business, they're talking to each other. Those are the people that they're not keeping an eye on their contracts. It's almost a rib. And, Canyon Seaman got inseminated elsewhere. And I wonder who else are they going to blame for this? I remember when a rare contract issue would come up, and we've talked about some of them. Savage was able to get away because Vince wasn't as protective of the announcers back then, and he thought that, everything was cool, and Randy wasn't wrestling, and blah, blah, blah. And the thing with Rude, well, he was kind of a manager, and he wasn't, because of the Lloyds of London thing, he wasn't able to wrestle, so he kind of escaped attention. And you mentioned, with Jeff Jarrett, that was, a situation where they just thought he was going to do business and lose on worldwide pay-per-view to a girl. But this amount of people and this lack of preparedness, when the first one happened earlier this year, the old Vince McMahon again would have said, I want to know. I've seen him do this. Send me a list. He'd just call the office. He was always getting on the phone, call somebody at the office. Send me a list. I want to know when every talent's contract is up right now. Of course, now they'd have to send him 200 and something names. Before it was like 40, but he'd ask for it and he'd get it. And I don't know what the fuck's going on now. But yeah, I mean, look at what they just had Kevin Steen. We laughed about this before we heard about the contract thing. He got left laying by a YouTube fuck and a mid-card guy the other day. I can't even remember one of the Paul brothers and who else was in the ring with him.
It was Logan Paul, and I don't remember either.
Yeah, one of the wrestlers, one of the boys. I don't remember who the fuck it was. He was that important. So, and that's what I was saying. Jesus Christ, he didn't like the way he was being used in Ring of Honor. What's he doing now? So, again, they're doing everything but packing these guys' bags and helping them put them in the car on the way over to cross the street to the other network. So I don't know how to fucking comment on this at this point.
Can I ask you a question or two?
Sure.
No doubt, right? He's going to sign with AEW.
Well, my God. You know, the only thing that would make Kevin Steen more difficult to deal with and more hard to understand is if he actually had the opportunity to go to AEW now and he didn't do it and instead re-signed with the WWF. No, there can't be any doubt that a guy like Steen that always wanted to do exactly what he wanted to do would want to go to a company where he will be allowed to do almost everything he wants to do.
So you got to figure they're going to lose Generico too, or they're going to lose Sami Zayn also.
Well, now I just saw when I was doing my internet research for the program that there's a report that Sami Zayn's contract is not up in the imminent future or this fall or winter, however they phrased it. So that, I mean, obviously, if it was, I would think that'd be a safe bet also, but he may be stuck for a while. He may not have his pipeline out of Devil's Island just yet.
But as soon as Kevin Owens or Kevin Steen shows up in AEW, the countdown begins as far as the fans are concerned. They're going to be watching Sami Zayn on WWE TV, expecting him to show up there at any time. Or as soon as his contract is up. They're going to be watching the countdown.
And I'm just wondering, would he be crazy enough, now that they've seen what he can do when he took the mask off and found the power of speech and has become a lot more all-around entertaining than El Generico, the ginger Canadian luchador that was a friend to all the children. Do you think he'll put the fucking gimmick back on? Or
no way. No. For special occasions. I'm sure there'll be a special match where all of a sudden El Generico comes back. How about a children's
birthday party or bar mitzvah? That's the only place that fucking El Generico gimmick should ever be seen again.
Well, not my bar mitzvah.
A special occasion. No, you had pros for your bar mitzvah. But I bet you they're so enamored of everything that they've ever done. All of them. The elite, Steen and Generico, they're so enamored of everything they've ever done. Instead of moving forward, I wouldn't put it past them to go right back to doing the same thing.
At some point, do you start calling AEW the Ring of Honor All-Star team?
I think you almost, well, no, because let's face it, the people that he's appointed as, or anointed, either one as EVPs of the company, were never Ring of Honor All-Stars. Anyway, somebody said that ought to be on Cornette's tombstone. Anyway, I'm still going with all in all, I'd rather be in Philadelphia. Little W.C. Fields nod there. You know where I'd rather be than Philadelphia? I'd rather be eating some of the fine fiber-filled products of Uprising. Have you heard about the people at Uprising, Brian? We talked about this last week on the program. The people at Uprising Food, their motto is our food system is fundamentally broken and it's making us sick. And the people at Uprising Foods are fixing that. No longer will our food system make us sick. It's up now to the people at Uprising Food. And you
No. I don't know if you realize how you phrased that, but no, uprising food will not be making anyone sick.
Oh, I didn't mean that at all. No, Uprising's mission is to liberate all of us from a broken food system that's stealing our health, and they have cracked the code on healthy bread. You simply cannot find anything this healthy that you'll ever be able to put in your mouth and get down. I'm telling you right now, folks, this stuff, 2 net carbs per serving, but 6 grams of protein and 9 grams of fiber. And I'm bad with the fiber. I don't eat a lot of stuff that has fiber in it, and that promotes good gut health when you eat fiber. And that keeps you regular. And I'll tell you, the bread that the folks at Uprising have made, it's a prebiotic fiber, a patent-pending breakthrough in psyllium husk activation. It makes fantastic digestive health absurdly easy for all of us. The products are baked with real superfood ingredients. And Stacy noticed the fiber, and she's been eating the bread. And it not only makes you regular, in some cases, you're unstoppable. Uprising has absolutely nailed the taste factor on both the sourdough-esque cubes, the bread-related food byproduct that they have made here. And they've nailed that taste factor to the wall. Boy, I'll tell you what, the taste factor has been nailed. It's been impaled. It's been prodded and eviscerated. And the crunch factor on their newly launched Freedom Chips, folks, I'll tell you, they crunch and crunch and crunch. You will be chewing all day long. If a biohacker and a high-end farm market baker had a baby, it would be Uprising products.
What?
This stuff's good for you. So go to uprisingfood.com. What are you saying?
Sometimes you say things that are so crazy, I don't know if they're yours or the copies.
I'm not saying anything crazy. I'm saying if you want fiber, if you want to be regular and evacuate your bowels to the point of complete emptiness.
That's not the copy.
That's not the copy, but I'm just telling you, this'll do it for you. You'll be farting through silk and shitting your brains out. Go to Uprising Food, because that's fiber in your diet. Now, your mother always used to tell you to eat your fiber, didn't she?
And protein, and there's protein. Don't forget the protein. A lot of
protein
wrestlers will listen.
Protein and fiber. Your mother never told you anything like this, folks. It's all brand new. Go to uprisingfood.com and use the code JCE to get $10 off the starter bundle. It's kind of like a mini trip to the grocery store, minus all the unhealthy distractions and delicious foodstuffs, and they will ship directly to your door. That's uprisingfood.com. Use my code JCE to get $10 off your order. You're going to eat this fiber, and you're going to be healthy for it. One way or the other.
That's right. Good stuff. I have to reorder some more of the bread pretty soon.
Boy, you need to. All righty then. We are ready to, and I must admit, with a slight change in the programming today, we do not have any thoughts on the NXT program from this past week because apparently my DVR did not recognize it, or it wasn't on there. So I didn't see NXT. And we're not going to make that mistake again. I've already checked it next week for the big debut on the September the 14th of the new NXT with the blotchy finger-painted logo and whatever they're going to do to this show. As in the words of Lucille Ricardo, I don't know what they do to it. Vitamin Benjamin. But I did say, Brian, and I said this to you out loud, and then immediately it left your mind and you didn't think about it again, that I was going to watch the Charlotte and Nia Jax rematch on Raw this past week. And that immediately left your mind and you forgot about it. And as a result, you did not see that match. Is that correct?
Yes and no. I did not see that match. I did not completely forget about Raw because I was actually feeling kind of up on wrestling. I enjoyed the AEW pay-per-view. And I was also really curious. How are they going to react to this AEW pay-per-view? Everyone was already raving about it. All the sites were already reporting about CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. Everyone was talking about it. How's WWE going to respond? And I got a few minutes into that Randy Orton, Matt Riddle promo, and I gave up. I checked out, and I forgot that. I was going to check back in to hopefully see the Charlotte match, and I completely never came back.
Okay, well, I recorded the show, and I said, well, I'll just start at the top and zip through and see if anything catches my eye. And that was where I started immediately fast forwarding. They tried to do, and I don't know if he's still listening, but Rob Moore from out in Greenville, Texas, sent me an idea.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah, he got me sued is what he did.
I was there.
Yeah, you were there. He sent me for one of the fan weeks. He had sent me an idea. He said, what about if you have this match where, and it can be done as a single or tag teams, but two entities, either two individuals or two teams start. And once a pinfall or a win is scored, then that person immediately faces someone else and on until you get everybody in, boom. And so we booked it in Morristown, Tennessee, and I called it the King of the Mountain match in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And I'll be goddamn if within 2 weeks to a month, I got a letter from some idiot tough man contest promoter saying, well, we have King of the Mountain fights. We have King of the Mountain copyrighted. You must not. Like, this was a spot show match to begin with, right? But besides that, just that he thought that there was going to be some marketplace confusion between the amateur tough man contest that he presented in various bars and barns around Chattanooga, Tennessee, I believe, and one spot show that we did on a monthly basis in Morristown, where we did that match one time. And so I wrote him a letter back, said, don't worry, we're not going to do the King of the Mountain match anymore, or King of the Valley, or King of the Hill, or King of anything else. But I don't think that anybody was going to mistake your drunken amateur tough man fighters for my goddamn trained professional wrestlers that are featured on television every week in a variety of markets around the area. So fuck off. But anyway, they did the same match, but they called it Tag Team Turmoil. So maybe they'll get a letter here soon. And all the multiple teams at the start of the program gave canned, emotionless statements. That's going to be a constant throughout this program. And then here came Matt Riddle and Randy Orton. Instead of RK Bro, they ought to be RO Broke. If this is a forced pairing, if I have ever seen one. Randy Orton was there doing an in-ring interview, and Randy Orton was all right. And as soon as Riddle spoke, it got ridiculous. It looked like a fucking Hell's Angels Club chairman and his fucking special needs nephew.
Once I heard the scripted line about munchies, I was just like, this is the worst shit I've ever seen. This is so much worse than anything AEW does. I'm not watching this. And that's what I gave up right away. The munchies line. Specifically the munchies line.
Same thing. So I fast forwarded. All the tag teams had some matches, and RK Bro watched them. Then they had Drew McIntyre against Sheamus. We've never seen that before. I stopped at the Damian Priest promo. They're giving him scripted shit too. He does it well, but God, I'd love to see him actually do a wrestling promo if they left him alone and he had an angle to talk about. And then Rhea Ripley and Nikki Ass are now a tag team. And they scripted them bad, and there was no emotion, and the material was bad. And then they had a match with Natalya and Tamina. And I just wrote, if Paul Heyman had had Rhea Ripley in ECW, I think she'd have been the biggest star in the company. She'd have been the female Sandman.
Well, yeah, she would have been beating all the men if Paul had her there.
Yes, and he would have pushed her to the fucking moon, and she'd have been on magazines. John Morrison, who I used to have such affection for, hosted his Moist TV interview segment where he threatens to apparently shoot people with his water gun with Karrion Kross.
I was going to say, did you say Moist?
Moist TV. Because he's Johnny Drip Drip, and he has the water cannon that he shoots people with, and it's Moist TV. And Karrion Kross is sitting there, and he's alternating between acting like he's on an old Merv Griffin show and then being his evil person. And it was horrible material. Now they're burying Kross. this was insane and juvenile. Cross came off like a moron. Morris came off like he's got Morris the Cat. Morris the Cat was a better actor than John Morrison here. John Morrison appeared to have the IQ of 6. It would just, and then they go out to have a match. This was a pre-tape, and then they go out to have a match. And we're expected to believe anything about, or even care about this match, even if we don't believe anything about it, after this bad sketch they just did. And Cross comes out in the Demolition Light outfit. It's so sad. As he was coming to the ring, you got the flavor when you were listening to the announcers and you're seeing the set and the way it's shot and the lighting and the costumes. It's like watching one of those goofy game shows where somebody's about to run an obstacle course. Some person they've pulled off the street and they're going to get dumped in a fucking mud hole. This is Raw. They did a package on Nia Jax, which looked great because she was just giving people a bunch of fucking bumps. And then she did a promo in the back, which scripted material. She was trying to be dramatic in delivering it. It was stagey delivery. She's not allowed to look at the camera, so she had to kind of stare off blankly. They had a fucking breakdown in cooperation last week on this television program, and they couldn't even just let this big Samoan giant woman go out and act mad about it.
Did they play clips of it throughout the show and talk about it?
No, they played a clip of her kicking Charlotte off head first into the turnbuckle and then hitting her with the fucking finish. They didn't play any of the actual uncooperativeness, the potatoes on purpose, and the general, train wreck that it was. But they didn't let... Apparently I missed Charlotte's promo when I was fast forwarding through the other shit. I'd like to have seen that, but by the time I realized it, I wasn't going to go back. But Nia Jax's promo was just more canned scripted shit that she was trying to be an actress with. Instead of screaming, "You blonde cunt, I'm going to fucking rip your goddamn hair out by the roots," which would be what you would normally think after they've been slapping each other in the face last week. But I don't know. What do I know? Anyway, then they had the match, Brian. You missed it. You know what I thought about this match? I thought this is the best match I've ever seen Nia Jax have.
Get out of here.
Because and by the way, it was worse than I thought last week, because to get the match, the rotten stinker of a match that Nia had with Charlotte, she had already beaten Nikki Ass and Rhea Ripley earlier in the program. Left them laying. But in this one, Charlotte has a great entrance, looks like a star. Nia Jax has an entrance that looks like somebody put a cape on a refrigerator. And so I'm expecting, and Shayna Baszler is with Nia Jax now. What?
It's a visual I've never thought of before.
Shayna Baszler Baszler comes out with Nia Jax, and so the two of them, Shayna looks like she's dressed like she just got paroled from reform school. She's a juvenile delinquent, and here's this giant cape-covered Samoan. But the bell rang, and suddenly we're okay. The point is, the reason why last week's match got all this attention was because communication, as we said, broke down. They started pie-facing, slapping each other. They're pulling each other's hair, and finally they got back on the same page, but it was just a horrible match. So as soon as the bell rings, Shayna Baszler gets the microphone and asks Nia Jax, who she just came out with, "Are you going to win tonight, or are you going to choke?" What? And Nia's shocked, like, "Why are you talking to me this way?" And Charlotte jumps Nia from behind. And I felt like the spot on Always Sunny where somebody says, "What is happening?" So now the corner girl is antagonistic toward the girl she's cornering. Then why'd she come out? But anyway, they started having an ugly fight. And they were being stiff and they were snatching each other's hair, but they were playing off last week when they were really doing it. But this, they were doing it as a work. And imagine that it looked better. So then they're trash talking. And then Charlotte said, well, fuck you. And she rolls out and crotch chops Nia and grabs her belts and going to take a walk like they used to do in the old days. But Shayna Baszler distracts her and Nia grabs her and pulls her in the ring and gets back on her. And they do some shit in the ring, and Charlotte hits chop block, and they do a back-and-forth struggle. Again, it wasn't a pretty match. You can't have one. You're not going to be doing one tackle, drop-down, hip toss, drop kick with Nia Jax. So they were playing off what they did last week, and it worked because they were working, so it was better. and Charlotte, at one point, Nia Jax was going to give her a superplex, and Charlotte drops down and gives her a power bomb, which Nia tried to sell. They went through a break. The one nitpick I have with Charlotte is she did her moonsault off the top buckle to the floor and flattened Nia Jax, but the problem was Nia had taken a bump on the floor and Charlotte just walks right up the ropes, climbs right up the buckles, does the big backflip. In the previous 10 seconds, had never looked behind her to see where Nia Jax was. So just that one little thing, look behind you. Even if you're not really looking for her, you know she's going to catch you, but you're not supposed to know that. But anyway, Nia took over again. And finally, Shayna Baszler distracts Nia this time again. And Charlotte hits her natural selection off the top rope. And it, boom, 1, 2, 3. And the match, it wasn't, Mildred Burke and June Byers, but it was lots better than last week and probably the best I've seen Nia Jax, except for the interplay between Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax was confusing and stagey and distracting, but at least Charlotte won and didn't get crippled. But then,
wait, can I stop you?
Yes.
So Charlotte won. What was the point of Charlotte, the champion, losing last week to Nia Jax? Or Nia Jax. Now you got me doing it.
So they could have a rematch and she could win this week, I guess.
Is everything a rematch there? Yeah, I guess it is.
Only when it shouldn't be called for. But anyway, then...
Yeah, really?
Alexa Bliss shows up on the screen. And they start promoing back and forth. Alexa and her little doll and her spookiness. And again, Alexa Bliss is great at this. She should be an actress in horror movies. She should not be in the wrestling ring. And the lights go off, and the lights come back on, and she's in the ring with Charlotte. A foot shorter, 50 pounds lighter. This looks ridiculous. And Charlotte says, what do you want, Alexa? And she points at the belt. She wants the belt. And so Charlotte basically, okay, well, if you want a title match, you've got it. But this is my ring. And then she got out of her ring. So she gave her a title match, said it was her ring, and then she got out of it and left. So there'll be a title match sometime in the future. And there was more Raw after that, but after that, I didn't want to see anymore. And that's why everybody's turning cartwheels over AEW. Because I guess the shit sandwich is better than the giant douche.
Did you see AEW did beat Raw? Dynamite beat Raw in the key demo this past week.
Now you sound like Uncle Dave in the key demo.
Well, because what else am I supposed to call it? The 18, the blah, blah, blah demo? What's the key demo? Everyone knows what the fuck I'm talking about.
How about just say they got closer, and this is tightening up. I don't give a fuck about the demos. I look at how many people's watching this thing, and I got a sneaking suspicion that by the time that they get finished, and possibly with Bray Wyatt and or Ric Flair, along with Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole and Zabba, I think they can beat Raw at this point. I got confidence in them. Because this fucking show, anything produced by the WWE is rapidly self-destructing, like the opening instructions on Mission Impossible. How's that for you 60s TV fans? And everybody's showing up on the other channel where they're hailed as conquering heroes who have escaped from Devil's Island. So I don't care about the demo. I think they're going to tighten it up even further.
You don't care about the demo, but the question I have is long-term. USA Network cares, and so much of everything right now is built around these television fees. If WWE keeps dropping and AEW keeps rising, I'm not saying WWE is going to go out of business, but so much of their business is based around those television fees. Television itself is already having problems and losing people, but, they're streaming and everything else. But WWE, if they keep slipping, and there's nothing that shows you they're not going to slip. I saw 3 minutes, and that was enough for me. I saw a montage of tag team interviews. Over 2 minutes, I saw, 8 different tag teams. And then I saw a few minutes of Matt Riddle acting like a child and Randy Orton. And I had such a weird feeling seeing Randy Orton there. And I'm not, could be seen as nothing but an insult, but it's not my intention. Watching Randy Orton there with Riddle and just seeing this whole fucking spectacle, it was like seeing Moose Cholak in the 80s. Just like, ooh, what are you doing there? What are you doing? He's so out of place amongst this. And I don't think there's anything that shows anybody any signs that WWE is going to get any better anytime soon. I think it's only going to get worse until Vince's stranglehold on everything is not there anymore.
Well, anyway, it was certainly a very raw edition of Raw.
You feel like you got it raw after you watch that fucking show.
It definitely needed some lubrication. What are you putting on your programs this week to grease them up so they slide in better?
We're going to oil all of you up this week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook. A few notes. The latest wrestling history mystery from Charting the Territories and wrestling historian Al Getz is out now. I don't want to say too much, but Jim, you and I have talked about this in the past. This is the first of a multi-part series in the Wrestling History Mysteries miniseries, looking at Mr. Zabo. Al Getz found a wrestler who in 1963 briefly wrestled in Oklahoma, had a world title shot, and then vanished with no record of who he is, and other historians, prominent historians, getting it wrong about who he is. A fascinating mystery. If you love wrestling history, check this out. ChartingThePodcast.com, also available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Also want to make mention of the latest episode of Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam. John's guest this week, Jace Nacarado, also known as Jace Sharknado and many other butchered names. But a fun show, a mailbag show, lots of listener questions about things like, what if Ted DiBiase stayed with the UWF after the Crockett purchase? What if Crockett doesn't lose Roddy Piper to the WWF? What if Ric Flair went with Tully and Arn to the WWF in 1988? Those questions and so much more, can't really say they're answered, but they're thought about, and people have opinions, and hear them today.
They're mulling them over as we speak.
McAdamPod.com, also available wherever you find your favorite podcast. Just search for Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam. And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, the Mothership! That's a good sound because the new episode of the 605 Super Podcast will be springing upon you next week. It is all done. We're putting the final touches on the editing in the co-host chair. And I have to say, I think people are going to love this conversation. Brian Solomon in the co-host chair, of course, he is the author of the upcoming, the first ever biography of the Sheik that everyone's going to be talking about. He also has a background working for Pro Wrestling Illustrated and WWE Magazine. We talk about a number of things, including what was it like working for Shane McMahon when he ran WWE Magazine. All of that and so much more, a packed show, including not a lights out segment. I'm going to call it a lights on segment. What's been happening at Arcadian Vanguard with the recent shows that we cut from the schedule. Find out the truth. Also, we have Howard Baum on Burt Prentice. We have Tim Hornbaker on Buddy Rogers and so much more. Out next week, more information next week, the 605 Super Podcast. Go through the archive today at 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcast. Jim, it's about to touch down the membership!
I'll tell you one thing.
Yes.
Did Brian Solomon, when he was talking about what it was like to work with Shane McMahon, did he talk about him dribbling a basketball nonstop in his office?
No, but there is a rather interesting story about Shane's reaction to a picture of his grandfather being hung up in the office.
Well, my God. Why would you want to see a picture of your grandfather being hung up in your office?
No. His grandfather who started the company.
That.
His grandfather who started the wrestling.
Well, that's no reason to hang him over it and to show a picture of it to his grandson. What if somebody took you out and hung you? Would you want your grandchildren to see a picture of it, much less put one up in their office?
I don't think I'd want photographers there for that occasion.
No, not at all. But Shane had the office in the corner on the 4th floor, on the opposite corner from Vince's, over in the talent relations corner. And when you went down the hallway, you could hear 30 feet away, he's always dribbling a basketball next to his desk.
What do you think Shane's dream job actually was?
I honestly think he would have liked to, in years gone by, now that he's grown up and he's got his own family and he's been successful, he's made his own money, it might be, obviously it is different. But at that point in time, he looked up to Vince. He wanted to be Vince. I think he wanted to run the company in the future. And he loved the business. He just didn't really get a chance to grow up in it and get an education in wrestling. He was compromised or handicapped in that respect by actually being the boss's son. Nobody's going to try to smarten him up to the way the business really works. They would just say things they wanted Vince's son to hear.
And that's what he knew about wrestling. Imagine what he knew about publishing.
Oh my God. Anyway, is it time yet, Brian? Is it time that we're going to actually, I have good things to say. So I guess maybe a few days off the internet did do me a world of good with my crankiness, because was it me, or until they got about halfway in last week's Dynamite program, it was actually like watching a real promotion, Pinocchio.
There were several segments on this week's show that I loved. I'm not saying they were perfect. You could always improve things, but I loved them. And maybe they were perfect for what they were. There were a few segments in a row that were good that were right after each other. That's always a promising thing, because usually it's greatness, shittiness. Greatness, shittiness. It's never back to back. There were several things I really liked. There were several things I really didn't like. I guess it was like the last half hour, 45 minutes that I didn't like it, and I also think the timing of certain things on the show was a bit curious. The certain matches that went long, and then the Moxley-Suzuki thing kind of seemed like it ended before it started.
Well, no, it didn't. It should have ended before it started, but it didn't seem like it to me. But we'll get there. That was last. And this is the program for September 8th, the follow-up to All Out. And they had a lot of shit to get in here this week.
From Cincinnati,
home of the Al Shuttlecotty News. I must have, right off at the top of the program, it was so refreshing not to have to hear excrement screaming for 2 hours, all of his Japanese vocabulary and fancy names for all these moves that nobody gives a shit about, and let the announcers with experience sound like announcers. And also, there's no reason to have a 4-man booth to begin with if you've got Lance Russell, Gordon Soley, Jim Ross, and fucking Big Jim Hess, for fuck's sake. You don't need...
One of those things is not like the others.
Well, hey, if they'd have got a chance to work with Big Jim Hess long enough, he could have brought him up to speed. But there's 4 of them, right? So anyway, this was better. Malachi Black's entrance, with what they're going for here, the announcers need to lay out of the whole thing. It kills the mood. They've done their opening billboards. They've told us the matches that we're going to see in the program. As soon as those lights go out and this Malachi Black thing starts, you can't hear anybody talking. because it just, what do you think? It just killed the mood. They're trying to create a mood, a vibe, if you will, and let him get in the fucking ring. And then things come back to normal again. That's just my observation.
I agree with you, except if it's the opening segment of the show, that in that case, you kind of have to talk about what's going to be on the show.
No, you don't. They just billboarded it. That's what I'm saying.
True.
They
That is
their
true.
opening billboards and the crowd pans and etc. Boom, lay out. JR, as he always used to say, lay out. When you've got an offbeat, unusual, unique style entrance, let it establish. But anyway, Malachi Black and Dustin. And they had when Dustin comes to the ring, they can certainly fill in any of the blanks there. And obviously there's something behind this match because Malachi Black has been on the rampage, so to speak. He kicked the shit out of Arn. He kicked shit out of Cody. He kicked shit out of old Shoddy Lee Johnson. And now, they set this up for now it's Dustin's turn. They started out quick. Malachi Black can bump. He moves around well. I liked this match, and I'm not picking it apart. I don't know if that I would have started off just shining Dustin right off because Malachi Black is still somewhat new and an unknown quantity. Would you have backloaded it where at first you put a couple of Malachi Black's things over and then you had Dustin do a nice little flurry comeback, whatever. But the point is, they had a good match. Malachi Black can go. Then they went to the floor and Black belly to backed Dustin through a table at ringside. And while Dustin was selling, Malachi Black gets in and pulls off one of the turnbuckle pads. And of course, stay tuned. More on this later. Dustin's selling. I mean, he's gotten dropped through a table. Okay, it wasn't as drastic as what, most of the flying dives that these guys take through tables. So he gets back in the ring. Malachi Black, did you see, does the Nick Bockwinkel step up to get in the ring?
I did not notice that, no.
It's fun. I haven't seen anybody do that since Bockwinkel. He's walking along the side of the apron and he just steps right up on one knee and then right up, and it looks like he walks up invisible steps. Anyway, got some heat on Dustin, got a heel hook. Dustin got a nice rope break. Dustin can really sell also, obviously. He's a veteran. Malachi Black starts toying with him. Dustin gets pissed and made a comeback. And then remember I said in the last match that we saw Malachi Black have with Lee Johnson, he was looking good until he tried to do the mind game sports entertainment part of things, right? Well, they did a spot where Dustin had made a comeback, but then, that snap turnaround power slam he does. He did the spot where he was going to miss it. And it looked bad because Malachi Black didn't get the fucking picture. Everybody I saw on Twitter was blaming Dustin, but you see Dustin shoved or tried to shove Black backwards. And he thought that Black was going to come off the ropes and he was going to go for the power slam, but Black was going to suddenly put the brakes on. But instead, Black just kind of took a half a step off the ropes, very slow, and wandered, and Dustin went for the snapping power slam anyway. It looked like he was trying to power slam the Invisible Man. So that was not smooth, but they got it back with a second later. Dustin did hit the power slam. And then Malachi Black had taken back over, and then he goes outside the ring and goes under the ring, Malachi Black does, and gets Cody's boot that he had stolen before when he attacked Cody.
And carefully placed under the ring earlier in the night.
And carefully placed under the ring earlier that night, knowing in this match that where nothing's predetermined and it's an athletic contest against somebody else, he'd have the opportunity. And the announcers even had to say that. He obviously placed it there earlier. And he gets in the ring and gives the boot to Dustin. And you wouldn't do that. Dustin gets pissed. And that's when they got off kilter. They each tried to kick each other in the gut and missed those. And Dustin dropped down and went for the uppercut punch. But Malachi Black sold it before he threw it. So when Dustin saw him sell it, that he tried to throw it quick, and Malachi sold it again, and they literally missed 4 or 5 strikes at each other that they were selling in a row. It just, every time he goes for the sports entertainment mind game stuff of going under the ring and getting something and giving it to somebody, it falls apart. Dustin hit the Canadian Destroyer, got a big 2 count. People are willing to get back in it. Dustin goes for the Bulldog. Malachi Black slips the Bulldog and tripped Dustin into the exposed buckle. Here was the problem I had with that. Your clock is ticking when you do something like that. When something has gone on the other side of the ring and the heel grabs the buckle and rips it off, now that's in play. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, see, we really were smart because the people knew it was going to come into play, so we delayed it and let them forget about it and then brought it back into play. The problem with that is you need to use the buckle before it could be reasonably noticed and fixed. Why did the referee just allow the match to go on with no buckle or no pad on the buckle for minutes through a commercial break? And nobody tried to do anything. The ring crew, if the rope broke, the ring crew'd be right there trying to fix the rope. So, point is, he went into the exposed buckle, boom, head first, and then staggered around where Malachi Black was going to hit that sweet, sweet finishing kick, and he missed it by a foot and kicked Dustin's right bicep with his shin. Malachi Black's whole deal is always great till he does the mind game stuff and it kills the momentum. And then in this case, Dustin's the best, most polished worker he's been in a ring with. And this is the one time he missed the kick. And then they went the deal where Dustin was going to bleed from the mouth because of the kick that missed his mouth. And then when he spit the blood up, it looked like a faucet. Some had already come out on fucking Malachi Black's arm. And then the rest of it, you can't do that. It looked like he had a goddamn internal hemorrhage. So the special effects didn't work. So Malachi Black's entrance is great. He looks like a great talent. His promos are doing great. We know Dustin can work. They try to complicate these things, and there's where they fall in a hole. I liked the match except for the special effects and the mind games that didn't work. Is that a fair thing to say?
It's a fair thing to say. I don't know if I would say it. I didn't like the match that much. Are you okay over there?
It's a fair thing to say. I wouldn't say it, but you can if you want to.
My cousin once had a great line. His then girlfriend said to him, "I know you're bored." And he said, "I'm not bored. You're boring, but I'm not bored." Which is such a great line that she told me, actually, just for the record. But I think that I had high expectations for this match, and maybe they were unrealistic because maybe it is a little bit of a style clash in there. I agree with you about Malachi. When he's just going, he's great, but I don't need any symbolism or anything else in the middle of these matches. Just work a match. It went too long. That's the case of a lot of matches. Not every match needs to go through the commercial break. I think several of them would benefit from being shorter.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would hurt anyone losing a match in 4 minutes versus 11 minutes on that show to that audience. It's a very forgiving audience. And the other thing is, I think both of them were off. I think Dustin was too. And typically Dustin's been good. So this isn't a slight at Dustin, but I think right now, Malachi Black should have been mowing through. If we're going to do him in the Nightmare Family, he shouldn't have been competitive with Lee Johnson. He shouldn't be competitive with Dustin. I'm sorry. He should have killed Dustin. They just casually announced later in the show that Cody's coming back for the stadium show. They should have said it here or somewhere near here. But instead, the dreaded enemy of the Rhodes family had another fairly competitive match that, who knows, he could have potentially lost and never been able to take his shoe out from under the ring. Another competitive match, and then just casually announcing, "Oh, Cody returns from filming, he'll be at the stadium in Queens because he's not going to miss that. There's no way Brandy's going to miss that. How much you want to bet Brandy will be in Queens?
Oh, you don't think Brandy's going to be on the show?
I guarantee she has to be in Queens. There's no way she's going to miss a stadium show in Queens. No way.
She could be in Queens. She could be in Kings. She could be in Princes. She could be in Aces and Eights. We don't know.
She's got the Prince right now, but those are my thoughts. I didn't like the match. It fell apart. It went too long, and it's just, to me, it's wrong if you're building up Malachi as a strong guy, and they have been, I would think. And you got Cody coming back. He should be killing every one of these Nightmare Family guys.
Well, but they're going by the logic of last week's show. In last week's show, it took him 10 minutes to beat Lee Johnson, so it had to take him 12 to beat Dustin. But anyway, the Lucha Brothers did a promo with Alex. So are they heels? Because they just beat heels, but they're yelling at me like they're heels. But they're speaking Spanish, so I don't know what they're saying. But Alex translated penthouses, and that was pretty heelish.
They're heels like Britt Baker is a heel.
Oh, God.
In that they act like heels, but the fans there love them for it. And Alex is great. He's one of my favorite personalities in the entire business. He doesn't get used that much. Maybe that's why I like him, because it's limited how much we've seen him, but I do actually want to see them do more with him. It's been infrequent. He's there, he's gone, but he's been great. He's one of my favorite guys in the whole business.
He's a much more effective translator than Chavo Guerrero, because you get the feeling that Chavo's actually saying what the guy really said, but you get the feeling that Alex is just saying whatever he wants to say.
You know, I'll just say this now, even though I know there's another segment later, but Chavo, you want to talk about a guy who can't lose the WWE stuff? Chavo is just hamming it up way too much in these promos. It's too cartoony.
But at least it's not Vicky.
That's true.
Miro and Eddie Kingston did a promo package, with their highlights and etc. It was good and brief. They're the least of our problems at this point. They're doing just fine. But then you know what it was time for, don't you, Brian?
I thought that was a rhetorical question. I don't remember what was next on the schedule, though.
Like Mussolini.
Oh, God, stop it.
And Kennedy. It's a cult of personality.
You know, one day CM Punk's going to listen, and he's going to say, you know, Tony, I don't want to use that song anymore. This fucking guy has ruined it for me.
Like Joseph Stalin and Seth Rollins.
Can you license AFI and get me away from this song and Cornette, please?
No, I'm telling you. And by the way, Joseph Stalin, come to find out, he had the big bushy mustache, but not a beard. So we mentioned a beard last week. We didn't. He doesn't have a beard.
Oh, forgive me. I apologize.
Anyway, then business picks up. No pun intended. Punk comes out. He gets into it. He's got energy. He's a great communicator. He got all the bases covered. He gave a rah-rah for the show. He fired the people up. He name-dropped some of the talent there in AEW. He's having a big party. He said hello to Linda Pillman. He mentioned Ruby Soho, Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson. The people are going berserk. And he then asked the fans about, well, who do you think? Who would you like to see me face next? And did Taz jump his cue?
I don't know if he jumped his cue. I think there were some issues over the whole show in terms of the mic going live to the room. I think that may have been the issue.
Okay, well, but the only thing, and it was great because Punk picked right up on it. Taz stood up and gets on the PA and says, take our names out of your mouth. He had never said their names.
But Punk, I thought that was the joke. I thought actually that was the joke.
I thought it was a save because I thought Punk was saying, what the fuck? I've never said anything about you people. And that's when Taz said, well, you did on interviews all week. And so I thought they realized that maybe he had stood up too quick and they're trying to save
him.
it.
I think that was one of the things that made the segment great was the idea Taz was saying, you better not do that. He's like, I didn't even come close to doing that.
Yeah, he's like legitimate. I didn't come close to even doing that.
And their timing on that part was perfect because it felt real.
Yeah.
It didn't feel scripted. It was great.
Well, there you go. And see, I fell for it. One way or the other. The point is don't ever mention Team Taz again. And he's like, I didn't. What's your fucking price? He said, out of respect, I will listen to you instead of, whatever he said, instead of shoving your head up your ass or whatever. But they had the people. Hobbs and Hook come out to the desk, and, there's this tension. And then Punk said, well, send Starks. And I'm like, yes, or Hook or Hobbs. I'm like, ooh, beat me if you can, survive if I let you. He does Taz's own closing line back to him, and music hits. The heels don't advance. I didn't know whether they should have made the match or if that's a good enough way to get out of it, but at least they've got Punk interacting with, as we mentioned a couple weeks ago when they did the thing with 2.0 and whatever. Yes, you need to heel fodder, but they have to be in some way respectable, believable, credible. You can't just drag them in off the street. So, but it was a good promo, good interplay. And then Punk's keep it even when Hobbs is going to the ring because he's the next match and they've got to pass somewhat by each other. And they had one of those completely ineffectual referees standing there like a white guy waiting for a bus, supposedly keeping them apart. But still, Punk wouldn't take his eyes off of him, and there was the looks and everything. So there's some tension there. So that was again, simple, easy, effective. Everybody understands it. Even if the person, one of the people in the promo may have jumped a gun a little bit, everybody understood what was going on.
And I'm not convinced he jumped the gun. I just think it wasn't, the mic may not have been on for the house yet, but I think that was part of it. But this segment was great. First of all, let me just say about Taz. It was a breath of fresh air to have him on commentary. Him being there, and because it's a different role than Excalibur's role, taking whatever you think about Excalibur out of it, the role, it brought out the best of Jim Ross, I thought. Shivani at this point, he's just repeating what he's told to say and, telling everyone how happy he is to be alive.
Yes, isn't this great?
But Taz has been he's been an MVP in every segment he's a part of. He's great on commentary, and him getting involved with Punk here made me very happy. Punk is so over right now that he doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to say anything. You really look at what he's saying in front of these fans, he's not really saying much, and he doesn't have to. Right now, he just has to go out there, they're reacting, and then you went right into this thing. I love them going back and forth. Right there, you have two of the best promos in the company and the entire business, quite frankly, if you give them time. I love the idea, if they don't fuck it up, we'll see where they go next week. We'll see where they go on Rampage, of Punk with Hobbs. I like the idea of Punk with Ricky Starks a whole lot. I don't know if we'll ever see Hook work a match. Whatever Hook is, I get a kick out of him because he's just this weird, undefined character. And by the way, there's another one of those Cody things that was just dropped. Remember, he was Cody's student. Taz got him back. And that was it. He was just with Taz, and there was never a reference made to that ever again. But I really like this. I'm glad they didn't rush it and go right to an angle, even though this is an angle, but go right to, a beatdown or go right to a match, because that's an AEW problem. They go from 0 to 60 in a second. But I thought this was great, and I am left waiting to see where they're going to go with it. And that's the feeling you want a wrestling fan to have when they watch a show. Where are they going to go with Punk and Taz, or Team Taz? I loved this segment. I loved it.
I'll jump in and disagree with one thing. I don't want to see Punk and Hobbs. Not for a while. Because think about it. Hobbs has a little ways to go before he needs the match with Punk. Starks is ready right now. Starks can work, and it can be the same situation with Darby where they can have a heck of a match and Punk can win and everybody looks better. Hobbs needs to be more physically dominant with his opponents now than he could be, should be, or would need to be with Punk at this point. I would say that match should be kept for down the road when Hobbs has. That's a top of the ladder match, and Hobbs is still working on the bottom rungs. It's not his fault. He just needs to be allowed to climb some of those before he gets that match. You know what I'm saying? And be ready for it.
You know what? I don't think you're wrong. I guess maybe just selfishly, I was trying to think of a way to get him away from Brian Cage. Maybe that's.
Oh, yeah. He needs to see Cage again. They don't need to show fucking Hobbs pictures of Cage on vacation. He never needs to be that close to Cage, and he'll get over. But anyway, then we go back to Tony Schiavone with Ruby Soho. And before she got too much of a chance to speak, imagine this, Britt Baker, Reba, and Jamie Hayter come in, and they started sniping at each other. And I said, it wasn't a promo to set the world on fire right home about. I'll wait to see the match later on. So we'll talk about that later on. But
not bad. Nothing terrible. And Britt Baker right now is so comfortable in front of that camera.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is Britt Baker's a great promo. But when she starts interacting with other people, whether it's on her team or her opponents that are not necessarily that great of a promo, then things start getting a little stagey.
Can I say one more thing? I have always loved Britt with, I was about to say Reba, but Rebel. And I wondered why they would put another girl in that group, that she didn't really need a Diesel or anything. But I've actually liked Jamie Hayter with them so far. I have no problem with that.
Did you see the match they have later on?
I'm talking about as a unit. I wasn't talking in ring. We'll talk about the match later on.
All right. Powerhouse Willie Hobbs, baby. Powerhouse Hobbs.
What is that voice you're doing?
Powerhouse Hobbs, baby.
Is that Dusty
Rhodes would love Powerhouse Hobbs.
He would just love saying it, I guess.
I just love saying it. No, again, this guy's going to be a star. And it's Hobbs against Dante Martin. And they started it out. Dante's the smaller guy. He's doing the ducking and the dodging. He's very athletic. He's green. But, so he's not just completely fluid in every motion, but it was the little guy, big guy thing. And they did a great spot where Hobbs ends up out on the floor and Dante Martin does the dive head first through the ropes, and Hobbs reaches up and catches him by the neck, and he's suspended with his feet on the rope, middle rope, and his neck in Hobbs's hands, and Hobbs just threw him sideways into the ring post. That was fucking great. And that requires being a fucking stout son of a bitch. And I've made notes. Good. Hobbs is not making this competitive. It's his time to get over. And that's what they're doing. He threw Dante Martin not exactly like a spear, but just chucked him into the barricade a couple of times. They go to the break. They come back. Hobbs has the great gloating facials. He's got a good muscular body, but he doesn't look like a pretty bodybuilder. He looks like a badass. He got some good heat on Dante Martin. He took his time. He's playing with that nice little knee drop he's doing. And he bears the fucking knee from the knee pad and then missed a knee drop, and Martin fought back and hit that big missile drop kick off the top rope. A little miscalculation there, and this is just helpful. This is constructive criticism. I'm not knocking these guys. But if Martin can jump that high up off the top rope and get that kind of hang time on that drop kick, the heel does not need to stand there dumbfounded and wait on it. He went up so high and got such hang time that Hobbs had to stand there and look at it. They need to prepare for that and figure out a way where the heel can turn into it more at the last minute so he's not just staring at it, because he was 6 or 8 feet up above the top rope. Anyway, Hobbs took a bump to the floor again. Hook blocked the dive that Dante Martin was going to do, so he turned around and got up ahead of speed and dove over Hook and wiped out Hobbs on the floor, which was a great spot. It wasn't overdone, and it made sense, and you didn't see everybody huddling up waiting to catch this fucking clown. It looked like okay, I've got a way around this. When they slow down and they make things mean something, it registers. And they got back in, and they lost track a little bit because Dante Martin is green, as I mentioned. But finally, Hobbs catches him coming off, hit that huge spine buster. 1, 2, 3 with authority, and they had a good match. And Hobbs got over. So I was very happy to see that.
I really liked it, although I did think it went a little too long. It was a good showcase for both guys. You said a lot of what I was thinking, so I won't just repeat it. But with Dante Martin, he gets an interesting reaction. He gets an interesting pop. Because we're in an era of just nonstop high flyers, it's unique when someone stands out amongst them. Sometimes he does stuff in a match and the pops are like Tiger Mask and MSG.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, like, not like, oh yeah, like they're waiting for the spot. Like, I've never seen someone do it like that so smoothly before. Very impressive. I really like what I've seen of him, and I like what I've seen of Powerhouse Hobbs, and this is yet another segment on this AEW show I can't complain about. This is right here, that period where I was saying, coming out of the Dustin Malachi match, which had problems, it was just segment after segment where I was like, this is good, this is good, this is good. And right now we were in the middle of it.
And next up was our favorite chairman of America's Top Team, owner, operator, manipulator, whatever he may be, but Dan Lambert was in the Skybox with Scorpio Sky and the other Page, who I guess have, since they've been designated the closest thing to shoot fighters on the roster, they no longer wrestle and they sit up in the Skybox with Dan Lambert. But he's the advisor for the Men of the Year. Did you see the Chiron now? That's apparently that Sky and Page is the Men of the Year, and Dan's the advisor. At this point, Dan's material is good, but he's got to slow down and mean each thing that he says a little bit more. He's giving a prepared speech of his grievances rather than telling the people something from the heart. But go ahead.
I think it's lame as fuck. I also think Scorpio Sky needs to stop acting like a goof up there while this guy's doing a serious promo. At least Ethan Page is acting like a smug heel. Scorpio Sky's acting like a clown. I don't like it. I think it's lame. And I don't think the fans are really into it. And it just popped up out of nowhere. Remember in the movie Cocktail? I don't know if you would remember this, but I don't know why this popped into my head. They're in the movie Cocktail, and what's his name? Tom Cruise and Brian Brown are working in the bar, and some fucking guy in a suit, kind of looks like Jim Cornette, goes up on the stairs, they put a spotlight on him, and just randomly everyone stops. He reads a poem, and then he walks away, and they go back to drinking and everything. It was like that with this. Out of nowhere, all of a sudden there's a spotlight on this guy who hates AEW so much that he's in a fucking box with an AEW microphone. How did he get that microphone? And they were just ready for him to talk. And then when that segment ended, the fans reacted the same way they did during the segment. Okay, what's next? I don't think this is working. I don't think it's very good.
Don't expect it to make any sense. They just wanted to make me a heel. And poor Dan is the surrogate Cornette.
What do you think is the better Jim Cornette role? The Tully Blanchard managing FTR role or the Dan Lambert with the Men of the Year?
Can I pick neither?
You can. Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk here in a second. Tully actually got to speak again, but it's been so long, I almost forgot what he sounded like. And I think he forgot how to use the English language.
Well, we could talk about that when we get there.
We'll get there. They did some nonsense between Matt Hardy and Pockets. I didn't pay any attention. It was on pre-tape. And then, here comes the segment that we're all talking about. MJF makes his entrance with Wardlow. I will say that Wardlow needs to dress more like an upscale bodyguard. Remember, he used to have the suit. Now he's got a muscle shirt on and some jeans. The Burberry scarf guy, right, would have somebody dressing. But anyway, let's go over this. And a lot of people are going to think, oh, how the fuck is he going to knock this? This should be something that Cornette would have creamed over. And it was fantastic on a couple of different people's parts. And it also highlights that sometimes I don't see what was, I see what could have been, right? That's where sometimes I get sideways with people. I'm going to tell you what was. Here's what happened. MJF came out and did not only his usual great promo, but he had extra venom. He had extra confidence. He was trying extra hard to restore his credibility, to get some of his heat back, as we used to say. He was prepared for this. He wanted those people to revile him. He knocked Skyline Chili in Cincinnati, for God's sake. You don't want to do that and walk the streets afterwards. It is the shits, by the way. I can't stand it, but and there's a new word, Brian, as a mid is the new word, right? It's like you're in the middle or what I missed.
It was the first time I had heard it used in that manner, but I don't know if it's something that's happening somewhere else.
Well, he kept saying it like it's got to be hip with the kids.
I thought he made it like the second or third time he did it, it kind of worked. And then he moved on, so he didn't stick with it, which was the right thing.
Well, but he got it over. It's something that was derogatory. But anyway, he called the people into the ring. Why don't you come in the ring and try to do something about it? Oh, you can't because you're cowards. He knocked Linda Pillman. And he knocked the pregnant daughter of Brian Pillman Sr., Brian Pillman Jr.'s sister that's there at the railing in the front row that has been referred to earlier by CM Punk. And since they're in Cincinnati, it made sense. This was not out of place at all. It wasn't a screen door on a submarine. This made sense for those people to be there. He let her speak and let her say something very smug, and then he started to fire back, and that's when Brian Pillman Jr.'s music played, and Brian came out onto the ramp or the stage, the entranceway area, had a microphone. Brian did a great job on his promo. He was in the spotlight for once. He had put some bass in his voice, just like you could tell that this was MJF's material. I think that's obvious. Nobody wrote that for MJF. It sounded like something that Brian Pillman would say, and it was very Cincinnati-centric, and he came up with this verbiage also. And of course, then MJF fires back and calls his mother Methany Pillman. Wow.
That was good. Come on.
Wow. And Pillman hits the ring, but there's Wardlow, and Wardlow stops him.
MJF's reaction to Pillman hitting the ring was great too. Just instant fear and then Wardlow jumping in front.
Yeah. And then MJF basically proceeded to eviscerate Brian further, told him his mother forgot to swallow, and where Brian bowed up again, but he got backed up by Wardlow. But MJF then tells Wardlow, he basically tells him off. He said, what, are you going to protect me like you did the other night? Go stand in the corner and let me handle this. You see the look on Wardlow's face.
No, it was even better. Go stand in the corner and look pretty.
Well, yeah, there you go. And so then MJF and Brian Pillman got face to face. And finally, MJF hits a line where, it should have done, or his mother should have done what he was supposed to. A long time ago, basically abort you is what your mother should have done. And that's when Pillman double legs him and starts the ground and pound, and Wardlow knows it's going on, but he's in the corner with his back to it. And finally, he reluctantly turns around and pulls Brian off, but Brian bounces right in, back again. So he pulls him off and suplexes him again. And then here comes Griff Garrison and fucking got clotheslined out of his boots, and MJF nailed him with the ring, and Pillman tries to cover up Griff, and the heels left. It was a great segment by MJF and by Brian Pillman Jr. It was a great segment for this television program in general, one of the better things they've done. Would you like now for me to tell you what I saw, what could have been?
Yeah, I'm very curious.
Because let me ask you a couple questions. Number one, we agree that nobody wrote this material for MJF. It had to be him. He came up with the material. He was allowed to do a promo on this television by the booker, but he was saying what he came up with.
I don't know for certain, but I would think that's a safe bet. Yeah.
It's a safe bet. And the reason why that they wanted to allow MJF to go so far with his verbiage was to get heat on him, to redeem him after losing the program with Jericho. Whether you like the program or not, he lost in the end. So this is his chance to get some heat back and to redeem himself in that way, correct?
I think that's a part of it. It's what he's doing next, but also, like we talked about you with the last Stampede, he had, you would think, a lot of heat taken off him. How do you get him going coming out of that?
How do you get some more heat on? And also, Brian Pillman Jr., we mentioned that they lost a golden opportunity when the original broadcast aired of the Dark Side of the Ring episode on his father. He came off as a very sympathetic figure. So Now, since the second part of season 3 of Dark Side is going to premiere again, they're going to be running those shows over and over. You know, Vice does that. So, with the exception of when it actually originally happened, this is probably the most opportune time to break Brian Pillman loose into something where he can be involved and get a chance to speak and get more notoriety as well. We understand all these things are understood, right? We need to get some heat on MJF. We need to feature Pillman. We need to redeem some of the things that's gone on before with him. And also, this is supposed to look like that MJF, by the nature of this verbiage, went too far, even for him, even for us on our program, on this network. He's going into business for himself. That's the vibe they were trying to give, right?
I don't know about the last part because I don't know if the vibe was MJF's going too far or just MJF's being MJF.
Well, he was
because Tony Schiavone called him a prick the same way he always does.
But I'm just saying the whole idea is that he made Brian Pillman mad enough to tackle him, and they're having a fight, and he said horrible things about the guy's mother, and we're supposed to be into this, right? They're not working together.
Correct.
So here's what the problem is. You can, if you're an inexperienced booker or whoever's producing this stuff overall, you can have individual great performances by the talent, and then you can still do them a disservice by not allowing them to paint the entire picture, including things that they're not responsible for or don't have the say over. They're painting a great picture of the main characters in this portrait here, but they're not filling in the background. And if they just stop and think, okay, got this guy going to say these horribly pointed things, personal things to this guy. We want the people to be behind the babyface, the hometown hero, and feel like that he's competent. He's going to do something about this. He's standing up to these people. He's not just being punked out. We want everybody in the right place. We want the heat to go on MJF instead of somebody clearing him saying these things on the air, right? We want to make this a shoot. So you do the same thing. You have MJF come out and do his entrance with Wardlow. And he starts cutting that promo and he knocks everybody that he did. And then he sees the Pillmans at ringside. And he gets down and he goes over in front of them. And it looked to me like that the reason why he let Brian Pillman's senior's daughter speak, the sister there, the pregnant sister, so that everybody would make sure they knew who she was and that she could say something and then he could start knocking her again. But when he turned the microphone over to her and let her say something, in my mind, not only was she too well prepared for an amateur, but it's not something that a prick like that would do, give her an opportunity to speak. Instead, he would have said, look at here, everybody, right next to old Linda Pillman. You know, the woman that passes for Mother Teresa in Cincinnati, this redneck town? You got another member of the family. Look at this one, Brian Pillman Sr.'s daughter. I can see that she's a chip off the old block. She's the next star of 16 and pregnant. You don't give the victim a chance to speak. You identify the participants. He's still talking. And once he says that, you don't play Brian Pillman's music and you don't have him come out on the stage with a microphone smiling and answering what's been said. You have Brian Pillman stalking down the stage, the ramp, whatever they've got, the entranceway, followed by 2 or 3 referees trying to stay. Hey, come on now, Brian, don't do that. And he goes right all the way around to the floor where his family is, and that's when MJF and Wardlow get back in the ring, and Brian is standing in front of his family members, and that's when MJF continues, and the referees are on the floor trying to tell Brian, don't start this, and you know how he is, it's not worth it. And that's when Brian Pillman gets one of the 18 interviewers that they've got around with microphones, Justin Roberts or Barb Brady or the girl or whoever else, give me that microphone. And that's when Brian starts talking back to him and does the promo that he already did on the stage, but now he's down there in front of his family. And he's talking to the guys in the ring. And then MJF says the same thing and calls his mother Methany. And that's when Brian Pillman jumps up on the goddamn apron and the referees are trying to hold him back because they don't want him to get in the ring with Wardlow and etc. When he got in the ring with Wardlow and went face to face and backed up after his mother had already been called into her morals called into question, that created a bad subliminal impression. He should not have been stopped and backed up by, yes, I know Wardlow's the bigger guy and the muscle. So don't create the confrontation. Don't make them that close to whereas Brian Pillman, because some guys on the wrong side of Cincinnati would have already heard some fighting words and are saying to Brian Pillman, is he ever going to slap one of these motherfuckers? Keep them apart a little longer. Like I said, you're painting the main characters, but you're not filling in the background. Now you've got fucking a few of the referees, maybe a security guy, one of the ring announcers. Brian Pillman's on the apron of the ring. They're trying to talk to him, holding on to his pant leg. MJF and Wardlow are in the ring. They're continuing the same verbiage they did. And then finally, instead of... When you've told Brian Pillman that your mother forgot to swallow him and he didn't just slap Wardlow, you've done wrong here. The forgot to swallow should have been where Brian starts to go through the ropes and everybody gets their hands on him. And I know they want to still illustrate that the program they were starting before where Wardlow is a reluctant servant of MJF's and doesn't like him either. A time will come for that. Keith Richards, that's a great guitar lick, but it doesn't fit this song, so we're going to save that for the next hit we write, and we're going to concentrate on this. He didn't need to create a reason to tell Wardlow to turn his back so he can get his ass kicked in this situation. As soon as your mom forgot to swallow, that's when Brian should have started trying to get in the ring, and that's when fucking MJF should have said, yeah, but that's because she didn't abort you. And then I've seen him do it. Brian does the springboard that his dad used to do into the crossbody over the top of Wardlow in the ring onto fucking MJF, breaking loose of all the other people that were trying to stop him. And that's where he ground and pounds him. And goddamn, the other guys come in and they're trying to stop Wardlow from peeling fucking Pillman off of MJF. But finally he does, and boom, and there's some, now here Tony Khan. If ever there was a place for Tony Khan, as soon as somebody on his television show said your mother should have aborted you, that would be where he'd be coming down the fucking aisleway, trailing a goddamn headset and a fucking thing that used to be plugged into something, waving his fucking arms like, no, we're going to get kicked off television. And this fight's going on, and finally Wardlow peels MJF off. And, of course, now Griff Garrison can come in. And Griff Garrison gets clotheslined and hit with the fucking ring. But you needed to create more chaos, make a shoot out of it. It's unplanned. If it was planned, it's gone too far. It's gotten out of control. Everybody's playing a part in this. Instead of just giving the stage to these people and letting them do a sports entertainment skit, even though they did it well. There's little details that you can throw in that makes it look more like it's happening on an impromptu basis, and somebody or more than one person got a little bit carried away. That's the atmosphere you're trying to create. Instead of leaving Brian Pillman kneeling over his partner who looks like Pippi Longstocking, the more I see him, just looks like a fucking teenage girl with a bad haircut.
Oh, come on.
Brian is kneeling next to him, and the heels just walk off. And then finally, as soon as the heels have walked off, then a doctor and a couple of referees are there to help Griff roll out. That's the things that made it look like a wrestling sketch instead of an unfolding situation that we don't want to see happen. Does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I'll just say I loved it. However, what you just said would have made it better, although I didn't have a problem with the sister getting on the mic in that moment because MJF was just going to insult her.
But she had to come back prepared.
I didn't think she was. I thought she seemed like, I mean, she was pregnant, so she wasn't, but just seemed like a drunk woman in the crowd who, was ready to say who the fuck she thought she was. I completely agree with you about in the middle of all this, and they already established who Linda Pillman was because Punk pointed her out earlier in the show.
Right.
And MJF's going at it with her, and they established that it's Brian Pillman's daughter and his grandson or his grandbaby. I forget if it was a son or a daughter she was going to have. They established all that. Why the fuck is he coming out, Pillman Jr., with his music? Whatever that was, I don't think it was Welcome to the Jungle. It was some bootleg Welcome to the Jungle. And then at one point he said Welcome to the Jungle, so I don't know what the fuck. You're right. He should have just hit the ring because he's fucking ready to go take care of this. And I agree with your other point. Wardlow shouldn't stop him.
It emasculated
It shouldn't be smart. He's a babyface. He should want to go out there and fight with his heart. It should be a stupid thing that he would get his ass kicked by Wardlow for doing it. But that's what he should do.
There were so many hard personal zingers that I felt like that they didn't give enough pre-thought and planning to, my God, when you've just said that to this guy, we know there's more material to come, but how can anything be worse than that? And wouldn't that provoke a violent response? There needed to be more moving parts. There needed to be more effort to keep these people apart from each other. There needed to be more effort to make it look like we're not just doing all this stuff in the ring anymore and everybody's cooperating. There's people trying to get you to stop. We're going too long on live TV. We're saying things that shouldn't be said. This language hasn't been approved. Whatever the case, that's why I'm saying I'm not knocking this thing. I loved MJF's performance, and I thought Pillman did great. But I'm saying you could have, if somebody, and like, if Tony Khan says, okay, you guys got 5 minutes for this segment, go out and MJF, you say all that really stiff stuff to him, and then Brian, you do this. If he told him, okay, they've maybe worked this stuff out amongst themselves, but does MJF have the power? Does Brian Pillman have the power to say, well, I'd like to requisition 3 referees, 2 security guards, the ringside doctor, and Tony, you need to come down on this. He can't say that. That's the duty of the booker or whoever the authority is over the show to say, okay, look at what these guys are going to do. How can we make this better? How can we augment it? How can we give them the background they need in this picture that they're painting? How can we make it look as convincing or as legitimate as possible? How can it make the maximum impact? How do we not make Brian Pillman look weak for not attacking this loudmouth motherfucker before he does? How do we create the space? How do we keep everybody busy? Those are things that you go over ahead of time. Every TV that I've ever produced or been in charge of, you try to think about these things ahead of time and what everybody's reaction would be and where they're going to be in the fucking thing. How close are they going to be? Sometimes if you're 10 feet away from somebody, things go fine. And sometimes if you do the exact same thing, but you're right next to each other, it's fucked the whole thing up. And that's what needs to be fleshed out on some of these, especially this. They had the chance in the kid's hometown, MJF's verbal ability, the ability to say things like that on national television. If they'd have thought outside the typical wrestling sports entertainment sketch type of thing where, okay, and then his music plays and out he comes and he talks in this microphone he's magically gotten. The thing that registers with all the fans is, well, you can't give a better example. The thing that registers with every wrestling fan of any company is shit that they see that they're not supposed to see or is not supposed to happen. All these new debuts, holy shit, we didn't think we were going to see fucking Bryan Danielson in AEW. That's what gets over. Shocks, surprises, things they know are real, and things that you can make them believe there's something to. There was an opportunity here to make this look really legitimate, and they just didn't think it through. But they're trying.
And the thing about the referees, I completely agree with. The only problem is you need someone, and it can't be QT Marshall, we've learned, to make sure that for the rest of the show, and quite frankly, for any other show, anyone else who does a run-in like that should be the case. Referees tailing behind them. There should be some consistency.
Hey, you can ask all the referees, a lot of these guys. Paul Turner was there. I never had to deal with that idiot corpse referee, but Paul Turner and some of these other guys, they worked for me with Ring of Honor or different places, TNA. I would always not only call everybody that was involved in a segment, from the announcer that was going to hand a microphone off to referees or security guys who were just going to run around and wave their arms. And I would not only let them know that they were supposed to go, but when they were supposed to go, what they were supposed to look for before they went, how the timing was supposed to be staggered so that they didn't all show up in a clump, and what their demeanor was and what they were trying to. I would even assign, you're going to be going to so-and-so. You're going to be over there with so-and-so. You're going to be checking with so-and-so. So everybody knew, and I would explain the mindset that we were trying to create in the fans' minds. We want people to think this is chaos. It's gone off the rails. You're worried. You're concerned about this. Your problem is that, whatever, and let them know how to think about the position they were in. So when they went out there, their reactions, their facials would be as natural as possible and fit the picture. And those are details. And if you're playing with the big boys, you got to learn to pay attention to the details. Go ahead.
Two more quick things, and then we have to move on.
Yes, we will.
But I'm not sure what I think about the idea they're, for the second year in a row, teasing Wardlow MJF dissension. I don't know if that should be MJF's next program. I don't think it should be.
Oh, good Lord, no.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. If this is going to be just something they tease on and off for years, I don't know how I feel about that. But the other thing I was going to say is,
there was a chance for everybody to forgotten about it because it's been months since anything was done with it, so they could have got out of it, but now they brought it up again. You're right.
We're about to have a very interesting moment, I think, based on my knowledge of Long Island and Nassau County. AEW is coming to Long Island. There's a chance for the very first time, and I actually think it will happen, MJF is going to be a babyface.
Because those people in New York love pricks anyway.
He's from Plainview. They're going to introduce a kid from Long Island on Long Island. It's going to be interesting. I think he's going to get over as a big babyface on the island. It's going to be interesting what happens.
Do you think there's any way he can turn him? He can't come out there and say, I did that in Philadelphia one night when I used to go out and introduce the Midnight Express. I said the same thing I'd been saying for the previous 2 or 3 weeks. You got to be the ugliest, rottenest bunch of people I've ever seen in my life. And they all went, yeah, we suck. Fuck yeah, fuck us. It was amazing.
I don't know how it'll go, but I think it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens. That's in a few weeks. But there were things that could have been done, like you pointed out, and you had great points there, to improve it. But I think MJF did great. I think Pillman Jr., for someone who isn't very experienced doing angles, did relatively good too. Although he's got to stop calling MJF Maxwell Jacob Friedman. He did it in 2 different promos. He said his whole name.
And we'll come back to another promo later on in the program. But moving on, the next match was Jamie Hayter versus Ruby Soho. And Brian, you shamed me that I didn't watch the Casino Battle Royal that Ruby Soho debuted in.
This happens every time I give you shit about not watching one of their matches. Every time this happens. And
everybody was talking about Ruby Soho she's another escapee from Devil's Island. She's never been so over. And just the fans have gone crazy over her also. So, okay, it's a girls' match, but I'm not going to skip it. I'm going to watch it because Ruby Soho is so over. And they had a brief, bit of the match at the start, and then they went to the break, but they came back from the break, and I kept waiting to see what all of shouting was, as Arn Anderson would say, what's causing all this? This was a match. I will admit these girls look more like stars and work better than the tiny Japanese outlaw crew that they had to start with because of Twinkle Toes' peculiar fetishes. But this match appeared to be a clash of styles, in my opinion. At one point, Ruby Soho was on a Argentina Rocca shoulder ride and then just leaned back, and Jamie Hayter was just trying to hold her up, and they just fell in a heap. And then Jamie Hayter gave Ruby Soho some kind of combination snapmare sideways stunner that she apparently invented on the spot. And they tried to get it back. And Jamie Hayter did some kind of big move and got a 2 count. And then Ruby Soho ducked something, kicked her in the head, and 1, 2, 3. And immediately after that, the referee, for inexplicable reasons, the announcers even mentioned, well, yeah, she was stuck in a hug with the referee. The referee got a big grin, spread his arms out, and hugged Ruby Soho, one of the competitors, because she won the match. He was so happy for her. The referee. Was there a payoff here? Is he a crooked referee? The referee hugs her like they're long-lost friends, which distracts her so that Britt Baker can jump her from behind. Have they told the story that the referee and Ruby Soho, are they related? Are they going out on dates? Did he drop any pretense of, was he just so glad that this monkey fucking a football looking match was over with?
I think the story is, and I'm not certain, that she was friendly with him when she was working on the indie scene before she got to WWE, and now she's reunited with her former friendly referee here in the confines of the Elite Friends.
Well, goddamn, then when Britt Baker's promo would be, don't give us that referee, because he's a friend of hers. Anyway, he distracted her so that the heels could jump her from behind. And they start trying to get some heat on Ruby Soho, and here comes, at long last, she's back.
Yes!
Riho!
Yes.
In a pink, frilly chiffon skirt that looks like she's gone to a 7-year-old's birthday party, and an AEW jacket that was made for some kind of grown adult with sleeves so long she looked like she was wearing a straitjacket. All 5 feet of her, and I don't think she's 98 pounds anymore. She looks like she's lost weight. She's probably been cutting the carbs. She hit the ring. That's too glorious a word for it. She can't even hit a ring. She rolled into the ring and made no noise doing it, and tried to make a comeback with some pushing forearms on the heels. And then Jamie Hayter grabbed Riho and fucked up some kind of move that she gave her, and she dropped her, which she was supposed to, but she almost dropped her before she dropped her. And then here come Chris Flatlander, hitting the ring with a chair, and ran everybody out, including most of the viewers. This whole thing made everybody involved look foolish. Did I summarize it in succinct but accurate form?
This may not have been the best match for you to check out. Once again, I'll say this. Tony Khan, if you are listening, and maybe we have to go above Lars's head and go to Tim Armstrong, but play the opening to Ruby Soho. It is a great song, dare I say an iconic song, off one of the best albums of the 1990s. The intro is perfect for pro wrestling. Even if you want to cut it and go right to the chorus out of the intro, you're doing a stupid thing, man. Now this match. Not good. It fell apart. It went way too long. This is another one of those matches. If it was 4 minutes, it wouldn't have hurt for the same finish. And none of the bad shit, or I shouldn't say that, but a lot of the bad shit would have been minimized. But it fell apart, and it shouldn't have been given as much time as it was, despite the fact that Ruby Soho's over. My argument would be, hey, she's over. Get her in and out in 4 minutes. So they want to see her again. Britt Baker's fantastic. There were moments I liked Hayter in the match, and then the match fell apart over and over again. But she's got a good look. And that's about all I have to say about that.
You know what they could have, and I've given Chris Flatlander grief because of some of the early exhibitions she put on, but she's got good size. She stuck with it. She had an injury. She rehabbed. She's got back in the ring. She's got potential. She looks like something. So I'm not even going to blister him about that. Ruby Soho, she looks good. She's got something. Not sure she needs to be in any more single matches with Jamie Hayter. They just have it's an oil and water type of thing, maybe.
No, they should have put her in there with Thunder Rosa coming off the pay-per-view. It would have been great.
Thunder Rosa. They've got Thunder Rosa now. They've got Serena Deeb when she comes back off of injury. They have Britt Baker. They could have cut bait on Riho. She's been gone so long, nobody would have missed her at this point. Riho and the Freddie Mercury wannabe with the mustache and the mic stand and the rest of these outlaws. They're not even outlaw independent wrestlers from Japan. They're outlaw fetish wrestlers from Japan that wrestle in goddamn apartment buildings, as we have documented, and little groups in barns. And because Twinkle Toes spent a long time in Japan, and I wish he'd moved back there, this is what they started with for a women's division. And somebody was able to convince poor Tony Khan that this shit would be palatable on American television. These 90-pound schoolgirls scrapping with each other in a very frilly and feminine and phony way.
They aren't all 90-pound schoolgirls.
So now they've got real female wrestlers on their roster. They could have told Riho, thanks for coming, Riho. Stay home. We got real talent now. But instead, Twinkle Toes still has this ridiculous fixation on trying to foist this foolishness off on the American public.
I'm happy Riho's back. I've missed her on the show.
Damn it.
I have no problem. You know what? If there's one girl in that division, that's the fucking Leon Ruff, and I hate to use that example, the Tommy Rich when he first got to Georgia. If there's one girl in that division, that's that. I'm okay with it being Riho as long as there aren't other ones. That's why I say there aren't a bunch of 90-pound. You know, Sheeta's looks like she's maybe 120. I don't know. But I have no problem with
Tommy Rich since 1975, and if he heard you compare him to Riho, he would fucking take a tire iron to you.
Oh, please. I'd knock him on his ass. He's an old drunk. But no, I think I got
Not
no
with
problem.
the tire iron, though.
I don't have weapons.
Somebody said something about a tire iron.
Yeah, it's going to get crushed against his skull if he makes the wrong move, the idiot. Now you got me in a feud with Tommy fucking Rich. I have no problem with Riho being
fucking idiot. You're calling him a fucking idiot just because he wants to take a tire tool to you.
And that was the women's match.
Yes, it was. Ricky Starks and Brian Cage did a package about the match that absolutely none of us want to see. And then, here we go. I don't know if it's better that they leave FTR sitting at home and we see all those pictures they tweet of them sitting on their decks in the Carolinas, staring out at the woods, contemplating peaceful life. I don't know whether it's better we see those or they actually make them come to work and then put them in joke matches like this. A 6-man tag with Shawn Spears, who I think we've already established nobody ever wants to see do anything again, with Tully and Wardlow in their corner against 3 of the 18 members of the Dork Order. Why is the Dork Order still again? Tony, you just picked up Bryan Danielson and CM fucking Punk and Adam Cole. And the Dork Order is still on your television show. Why are they still existing as a group? Why is this a 6-man tag? Why cannot FTR, the best tag team in wrestling, rehabilitate themselves by getting a tag team win on their program, since all they do is fucking put more people over than goddamn George South ever dreamed of and basically lay around on the mat waiting for somebody else to cover them? Who gives a shit that the Dork Order are arguing with each other when we still don't know them apart? Interchangeable job guys with masks on and people with no personality yelling at each other in phony groups. They showed a horrible pre-tape of all the Dork Order yelling at each other until one of the girls told them all off. So they were dressed down by a 120-pound blonde and shut up by her. And then they go out to fight the best tag team in the world. Early on in this contest, which the early part consisted primarily of Shawn Spears getting the shit kicked out of him and having a million indie spots done to him by the Dork Order. Apparently FTR didn't want to participate in any of that foolishness. Did you hear Jim Ross mention, well, back when I started refereeing, such as for the first 120 years of wrestling, Once you tagged in to a match, remember, I've mentioned this. Once you tag in, you have to make contact with your opponent before you can tag back out. He brought that up. That's the way it used to be, but they've forgotten that too, along with all the rest of the rules. Every time that FTR got in the ring, one of them, either Dax or Cash, you could tell how bad they want to wrestle. Instantly, the intensity level picks up. Instantly, the professionalism picks up. Instantly, there's something going on. It's like watching Pavarotti sing in a fucking high school play. Suddenly, in the midst of this, whatever they're doing here amongst this indie level talent, shit suddenly happens. It's magic. And then they tag back out. But FTR got some heat on Little Brutus there, because the three members of the Dork Order, it was Pizzeria Uno, Dick Grayson, and Little Brutus. So they got heat on Brutus, but because Brutus is one of the people arguing with the other half of the Dork Order, Brutus made his own comeback. Because they were having miscommunication, so they can't tag each other. So he made his own comeback, but then he had a double knockout with Pizzeria Uno, who was on the apron of the ring, and then they hit Brutus with a triple team, and guess who pinned Little Brutus? Spears! Spears got the pin. So again, a team of job guys that cannot be defeated until they make their own mistake. After the babyface they got the heat on makes his own comeback after these three heels have beaten him up, then the babyfaces, job guys, make a mistake, allowing the heels to win the match, and Spears gets the pin instead of either member of FTR. What is FTR's television and pay-per-view record this year? Just in the year 2021, they won a tag team match against Santana and Ortiz where they couldn't do the finish that was planned because Cash got his arm fucking ripped open to shreds by their substandard ring. So then after he got well, they brought them back and rematched it so Santana and Ortiz could beat him flat in the middle of the ring. They've been in a bunch of multi-man chaos matches with these stupid groups where they usually are on the losing end. If they win, they certainly never get the pin. What have they wrestled 4 tag team matches this year? And have they won more than the one that was fucked up by Cash's injury?
I'm actually trying to find them on the roster.
They do a good job of covering up. Every time FTR does win something, the attention is put somewhere else. Usually they don't win anything. Most of the time they're lost in the crowd. And while we have to watch the rappers and the luchas and the cosplayers and every other tag team have weekly matches that last 30 minutes, we get FTR once in a blue moon, and some way or another, they just kind of disappear again. Because every time they get in the ring, they show the inadequacies and shortcomings of almost everybody else in the tag team division. Oh, remember that Young Bucks program between the two teams that differing fan bases thought were the greatest teams in the world, and we can't wait to see this collision? One time, FTR does the job, they get sent back home, and then the Bucks turn heel to take their place. Fucking hell, this is... Ray Charles could see this shit.
For the record, I'm looking on the page, and certainly there's something wrong looking at the math here, but for just Dax Harwood of FTR.
Yes.
In 2021, his overall record is 11-4. It says in singles matches, he's 0-2. In tag team matches, he's 6-1. And in trios matches, 3-0. Now, you may be saying that does not equal 11-4, and you would be correct. So I'm not sure where the discrepancy comes from, but those are the only matches shown here.
And also,
6-1 as a tag team.
Where?
Exactly.
Where are they hiding all these?
In 9 months.
YouTube?
In 9 months.
But wait a minute, on YouTube, we haven't seen them win 6 tag team matches on their television program. Are they hiding it on YouTube?
They must be.
Well, when the Midnight Express or Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, or Nick Bockwinkel and Ray Stevens, or any other tag team in history got together and entered a new promotion, I would say they probably won 6 matches the first fucking week. And then the Dork Order got in a fight with itself, and the 2 girls came out and bitched at them. So, yeah, so now they're being told what to do by the girls, who are obviously smarter and probably tougher than they are. Speaking of FTR, Tony Schiavone interviewed Tully Blanchard. Did you see this? I was shocked.
I did see this, and I'm going to tell you at the top a thought I had. Because you had said something a few weeks back, whenever the last time Tully talked was.
Yes.
You said, Brian, do you understand what he said?
Yes.
So I paid attention this week, and I've come to the conclusion that Tully Blanchard is incoherent. I have no idea what he was saying.
I don't know what to place the blame upon. Because before, a couple of times, there was one with Arn Anderson. I said, these guys were tremendous, all-time great promo men, but they seem to be trying to explain a story that they have been told and that they don't understand themselves, but they're trying to explain it the way it was explained to them. In this case, I couldn't tell whether somebody suggested to Tully that he say this in this fashion and he didn't get it, or he botched it, or whatever, but I didn't understand a fucking thing he was saying, except that he asked for Spears versus Darby Allin next week, and he challenged Sting. One more time, you and me, Stinger. Oh, no, please. Oh, God, please. No, please. Put me in the theater for a bunch of William Castle horror movies and let the Tingler climb up my leg. Anything but that. They couldn't possibly be teasing Tully and Sting at this point in the world, could they?
I don't understand what the point of Tully is. I was excited about the idea he was going to be involved early on.
Tully Blanchard managing the new incarnation of Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, FTR.
Yeah.
And since then, Tully never speaks. Possibly now we know why. He never interferes. He's been babyface as much as he's been a heel. This is not a traditional manager-wrestler relationship, to be mild about it. None of it makes a lick of fucking sense. And now he tried to somehow draw a correlation between what Spears did in the 6-man to that's the reason why they want Spears and Darby next week. I don't understand. And the thing with Sting, I don't understand. And then we go to Officer Bar Brady in the back in the trainer's room with the Varsity Blondes, Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison. Marvez's pitch set the tone as completely phony and amateurish because he recites a prepared line that he has memorized with no feeling, and it gives off the vibe that this is complete caca that we're imparting to you here. And then Brian Pillman had to stand there doing an interview while Griff Garrison held a ice pack to his supposed injured eye where MJF punched him with the ring and made fake faces about how much pain he was in. He's obviously never had a black eye before, because you don't work it like that, kid. And I guarantee you, as a matter of fact, well, I've mentioned this before, but one of the better black eyes I ever got cost me about 20 stitches on my cheekbone, and my whole eye swelled up shut, and it was all purple for fucking 2 weeks, and I didn't want to press a goddamn hard bag of ice onto that. It didn't make it feel better when I was pressing sharp, hard-sided ice onto that, or when Castor and Bivens, it was Castor and Bivens, the Acclaimed, right? They walk in.
Yeah.
And they toss another bag at Griff Garrison, a bag of ice, and hit him in the face. And You got a black eye. You're not a paraplegic, motherfucker. Are you an adult man? Apparently not. A guy walks in and throws a fucking bag of ice in your face, and I don't care if you got a black eye or a leg missing. You stand up and you attempt to swing at that motherfucker. He just stood there, sat there, and made a boo-boo face and started fake selling his fucking head again while Caster and Pillman plugged another match, did phony interaction with each other, and then the heels on the way out threw the flowers, the roses at him. This is why when they hit something like they did between Pillman and MJF, then they follow it up with something like this, and we're back to children. We're back to fucking children. This was a pre-tape and should not have been allowed to air. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, up to the MJF promo segment was an excellent episode of Dynamite. It's very much hit or miss after that.
And there's going to be people out there going, oh, you hear Cornette just hated and tore apart MJF and Pillman. No, I loved both their performances and thought that they deserved more backup amongst the periphery of people that should have been involved. And I critiqued it, but that was great. Yes, the first hour of the show, mostly wonderful. Second hour went in a fucking porcelain throne. Tony Schiavone was in the ring, and he introduced the best faction in the world. So now the announcer endorses the heels. He didn't say self-proclaimed. He didn't say they claim to be. They call themselves, folks, these are the best in the world. It's the heels. Then here comes the whole clown show out with that goofy music. Beat your meat, beat your meat, beat your meat. It's fucking, God damn it. They had Cutlet and knock it the fuck off with them, which means there's 8 of them. They're the Good for Nothing brothers. There's the Hardley Boys. There's Twinkle Toes. That's 5. There's Cutlet, 6. There's Knock It the Fuck Off. There's 7. And of course, Don Fallis, who now he's got a tan. He switched the pink suit where he looked like a bottle of Pepto-Bismol for the powder blue one. Now he looks like a fucking Viagra. Balding Buck has a chain from his nose to his ear hanging down. These two, the Hardley Boys, are the most uncool, unpierced, untattooed, Christian as fuck nitwits in the whole world, and he's out there trying to look like Lenny Kravitz or some shit. It's phony. Everybody, he's not Malachi Black. He ain't committed to that. He ain't got tattoos all over his whole body. He ain't got shit pierced that we probably can't even see. He's not authentic. He's wearing clip-on bullshit he got at Hot Topic, where he and his brother buy their fucking personal vibrators.
I didn't know they sold those at Hot Topic.
You weren't aware of that? Boy, you went to the mall in the late 70s. The only place you could get a vibrator for use in certain situations was at Spencer's Gifts or Hot Topic or one of those. They call them personal massagers. Before you were 21 and you couldn't go into a goddamn porn store, but you needed certain implements to make Saturday night turn out better, you went to Hot Topic or Spencer's Gifts.
In New York, anyway, you can go to the porn stores before you're 21. All you got to do is go to Penn Station at night, and you're hooked up.
Well, if I were you, I'd boil the thing when you got it home before. At least all mine were brand new out of the box. But
I didn't say it was on the ground. I didn't say I took anything home. What are you trying to incriminate me with?
I didn't say it was on the ground. I'm just wondering where it's been recently held. Anyway,
sure.
It could have been the one. That's why Twinkle Toes makes that face when his butt plug falls out. It could have been that one that you're picking up and carrying home with you. Anyway, I did see, with all these guys standing in the ring, if in all seriousness, if Cutlet and Knock It Off weren't in the picture, it would be easier to take, because not only are they dressed like idiots, but they have the one's got the face shield and the other one's got the headset on, and there is no purpose for them other than visual comedy.
Can I just say something where you and I will disagree, and I know it in advance, because I had a very similar thought that you just had. And I understand why you feel the way you do, and I'm not taking anything away from that or saying that you're wrong. I understand why you feel the way you do. But with that said, I agree with what you just said, but I would get rid of every one of them but Omega. And even if you want to keep Omega with Callis, I think Omega, just being the usual goofy Omega character, I think he's a lot more palatable when he doesn't have all this other stupidity around him, and it all drags him down.
It could work if he was the lone goof, is what you're saying.
I'm just saying, if you had Kenny Omega, you wouldn't necessarily make him in charge of the fucking NWO with fucking Virgil and Marcus Bagwell. And that's what this fucking feels like. The Young Bucks are playing it up. And by the way, look at the reactions the Elite are getting coming out. They're not getting fans really booing them heavy or anything. I think the fans are really into Omega. I think the Bucks' heels is just lame. I think the Good Brothers, boy, I don't know what you call it. Just it's not go home heat. I hate X-Pac heat. I don't use that term. But it's just like, why are you here? You're wasting all of our time heat. And then there's Nakazawa and Cutlet, who are just wastes. But if it was just Omega acting silly, I'd be okay with it. But this is the worst fucking faction in wrestling. It's awful. Next to the Dark Order. This is awful.
But it's about to get worse. Because they introduced their newest member, Adam Cole. He did his old entrance. I wish he had the old music. That old music had the vibe, and it was perfect for his boom and his Adam Cole baby, and he had the spots in and everything. I did notice that Twinkle Toes was acting even sillier than usual when Adam was coming in trying to get some attention away from it. They've got to know that these real stars coming in are drastically taking their spotlight. But Adam Cole, how many good things have we said about him? And the people didn't like it that I said, why did they put him in a fucking group his first night in? And everyone, well, don't you know he's always been in the Elite? And he's always... No, you know who knows that? The people that are already there. The choir already knows the words to the fucking hymns.
And not even all of them.
But nobody else. No, it's been 5 years he's been in NXT leading the Undisputed Era. People could give a shit, and many people don't even know that they used to be together in the Indies. But regardless, you get a guy the level of Cole with the buzz that he had, and you bring him in, and you not only put him in a group and make him one of the boys instead of a standout right at the start, but then he's been put in a position twice where he gets upstaged by a bigger star coming out on a fucking entrance. Think about this. Where else could you have put Adam Cole in a position where on the pay-per-view and here he gets big entrances? One is a surprise and one they knew he was there. And he within minutes is upstaged by bigger stars, bigger entrance. Adam Cole gets in the ring, and the first thing he does is tell Tony Schiavone off for looking at Britt Baker wrong, or if he looks at Britt Baker wrong. But I know you've been close to her, Tony. Tony's fucking 60. Does he not trust his own girlfriend not to want to blow a 60-year-old announcer? And he get out of the ring, nerd. Adam Cole is 30-something, looks 20-something. He's calling a 60-year-old man a nerd. It sounded like children again. They berated Tony, and it took a full minute for the 60-year-old man to be bullied out of the ring by the fucking wrestler that's calling him a nerd. Tony wasn't going to go. Tony knew one thing about me. If I told a motherfucker to get out of the fucking ring and was in front of the people and he didn't go, there was a racket coming. Right? But they just, what are they going to do about it? That's what Tony should have said. What are you going to do about it? That would have fucking puzzled him. But anyway, Adam Cole then did a great promo. A better promo than anybody in the Elite, including their manager, Don Fallis, has done yet, because it was all serious. He's well-spoken. He's trying to get them over. Now, the problem is he's putting all these guys over, and he's standing in front of a collection of stooges and clowns and comedy figures, and he's a diamond and a cow pie. But he did I wrote, this was the best verbal performance ever by anyone in this group. Problem is only the product that's standing behind him that he's got to sell. But then, so he has his say, and then Twinkle Toes gets the microphone and tries to follow that. So already we've shifted off Adam Cole, well, thanks, but now here's this guy. And Twinkle Toes says, you know, the one thing I hate about the other night is I hate interruptions. And instantly, my, how fortunate. They must have been running low on time. They probably went over. Because Danielson's music hits as soon as the word interruptions comes out. Even the uninitiated to television production would have said some motherfucker had to have his finger on the button to play the music that quick. As soon as they heard that key word, I hate interruptions, music. And here comes Bryan Danielson, and he's over like God, and the people are loving him. And he makes an entrance. So Adam Cole now is back in the group because Twinkle Toes, the boss of this whole thing, says, hey, guys, can I have the room? And he gets all the heels to get out of the ring so that he and Danielson can be in the ring, so we know who's running the show now in the Elite, and it ain't Adam Cole. And then Twinkle Toes goes into full phone sex voice and starts whatever he's going to, and Danielson just grabs the microphone and asks everybody, hey, do you want to see Bryan Danielson versus, he didn't say Twinkle Toes, he should have, Kenny Omega, and the crowd goes, yes, yes, yes. And then Danielson tells Twinkle Toes off, as he should have. And then they get in a schmaz, and the heels get in, and now we go back to AEW. Every week, the heels jump in, but here comes Jungle Boy and Christian Cage, Dino Douche, the usual suspects. Everybody comes out in a clump. Everybody hits several dives, and Bryan Danielson hits Cutlet with the knee, because Danielson gets the last move. And they play the music. It was complete sports entertainment. And Bryan Danielson's over, and they want to see him against Olivier. And Adam Cole's over, and they want to just see him, period. But this was a complete sports entertainment segment with too much shit going on, with too many people, with too much interaction. And was the exact opposite of what got over about CM Punk's debut and everything he's done since then, which has been the simplest things that have been done on AEW television involving the fewest number of people. So that way you actually see, acknowledge, register, and remember what goes on. This was self-indulgent to use these two stars in this manner to interact with your fucking friend from Japan that used to carry your bags around and your friend from high school that used to do flips on your trampoline and etc. So there you go. What'd you think?
I don't want to go too long on this because we got to wrap this up eventually, but I will disagree with you. I did not like Adam Cole's promo. I don't know if he was nervous, but it felt to me like, I saw him a lot in NXT. It felt off. It felt like he was a little nervous. Not repeated, it's his catchphrase, but I don't remember him saying baby twice within 30 seconds before. I thought it was a little bit of a crutch that he went back to.
I think he was thrown off because he was trying hard to sell those guys as being more than they were, instead of worrying about concentrating on himself, which is what he should have been doing.
He didn't feel like himself from NXT, I'll say that. I didn't like it. To your earlier point, yeah, Danielson comes out and it's just Omega or Omega and Callis in there. There you got something. But when it's Omega with the fucking late era NWO, that's what this fucking is. That's what Gallows and Anderson and the fucking Young Bucks are with their two fucking stooges. It's late era NWO. It's really bad. And I don't see Omega the same way you do.
You actually had Omega tell fucking Adam Cole, go ahead and get out of the ring, come back in for the schmaz. Big boys are talking now. Adam Cole just got there this week.
I'm not at all impressed with Adam Cole in AEW so far. Limited what we've seen, but the pay-per-view debut and then this, I don't know. I'm not feeling it at all, and I liked him in NXT. I'm not feeling it so far.
I'll tell you what we're going to see, and then we're going to cover this last match and be done with it. We are seeing now the difference in the people that come into the company because they want to join their friends and have fun and the people that come into the company because they want to make a difference and draw money, and they have creative control that they are using. That's where we're seeing the difference. Punk is about business, and it looks like poor Adam Cole and maybe Bryan Danielson are about just having some fun. Because I can't believe either one of them thought that if they'd have thought it through, that this was... They got great debuts because people just wanted to fucking cheer them if they're walking down the street. But the way that they have been used, I don't see how that any of them thought that through and thought that this would all be great to just be in the middle of this mix of multiple people, most of whom matter not in anything. All right, it ain't going to take me as long to talk about the main event as it did Moxley to come in from the parking lot. Jon Moxley, the CEO of Moxley Plumbing, versus Minoru Suzuki, Japanese MMA legend, 50-something years old. And as we mentioned before, this just, as Jim Herd would say, was dropped in out of a helicopter last week. And I could tell they were in trouble when they went on the air at 14 minutes till the hour, and it took Moxley 3 full minutes to get in from the parking lot. They were trying not to let this go too long. And they shouldn't have. And they didn't succeed. I'm going to tell you what this match was, and then, Brian, you tell me if I've misrepresented anything to people. The bell rang, and they stood in the middle of the ring and traded forearms one after the other in a slow and deliberate pace while asking each other to hit the other one back. 16 forearms, 8 from each guy, plus 2 big boots to the face, and nobody even went to a knee. Most of the shit looked like it barely connected. Nobody sold anything. Then Suzuki broke loose with 10 quote-unquote palm strikes that looked like the sequel to Sissy Boy Slap Fight, and Moxley never even bent over from those, and then Moxley fired back with 3 forearms, and Suzuki staggered to the ropes and bent over, and they went to the break. I said, what the fuck is this? I didn't get all Japan tapes in the 80s for the Giant Baba matches, but he was better than this then. I wanted to see Tatsumi Fujinami on a regular basis, not when he was 61 years old. They come back from the break. Minoru Suzuki actually hit the ropes a couple of times to get some steam up to throw a kick. Moxley's best spot was biting Suzuki's face, so Suzuki turned around and bit his. Then they stood in the ring and traded fake headbutts. And when I say fake headbutts, I'm saying fake headbutts. Either the deal where you can get by with one if you're like Terry Funk used to be great. With the one, grab the guy's head, boom, and everybody sells and you're fine. But when you're doing them deliberately to each other back and forth and not selling them, they look more phony, including when they did the double freestanding headbutt. And if you slow-moed it, you saw them close their eyes and pull their heads up and then go book. And then they traded the forearm. They did the forearm spot again. More of them. Then Moxley tried to charge at him and clothesline him, but Suzuki didn't want that because he wanted to throw another forearm, so Suzuki just turned in and didn't sell the clothesline. And then he hit another forearm, and then he ducked a clothesline and snatched a sleeper on Moxley, but when he fucking put the sleeper on him and pulled Moxley in, he pulled the back of Moxley's head into his own right eye and busted himself open with the back of Moxley's head, and within seconds was bleeding like a stuck hog, but he did it himself. Suzuki went for the Gotch pile driver. Moxley backdropped him out, hit what was supposed to be his paradigm shift double arm DDT, but he always takes it easy on these old Japanese guys that their bodies are so broken down you can't drop them on their fucking head. So it looked shitty. Then he hit a clothesline on Suzuki. Suzuki kicked out. Then Moxley hit 2 more clotheslines, and Suzuki just came up and hit a drop kick. And Suzuki now Moxley's selling, Suzuki standing up, he's bleeding. I wrote, who is this match supposed to be getting over? This cult figure from Japan that has an ardent and small following is on national TV in America beating up a former WWE champion that's supposed to be one of the big stars of their company. And then Moxley threw a couple of shoot punches that are, since they're supposed to be shooting, and this is supposed to be shoot-style wrestling, and all of it looked phony. And he threw the shoot punches, one of which looked like a potato, the second one missed completely, and then grabbed Suzuki and gave him a regular double-arm suplex and just dropped him over flat of his back. And that was the finish, 1, 2, 3. So he beat this feared shooter with a regular double-arm suplex that wasn't even that impressive for a double-arm suplex. And then he left the ring and went out into the crowd and luxuriated in his hometown love, because he went all over the arena from one side to the other for a while, because apparently they went home with a lot of time still left on television, and him in the crowd was better than that fugly fucking match. Your thoughts?
Not too much to add to that. I want to wrap this shit up.
Is that what I saw?
That is what you saw. It was a horrible match. It never got going. I thought it was a timing thing, but then they gave Moxley 3 minutes to just parade around the building at the end. I don't know what that was. I'm going to upset some fans here, and there are fans who accuse me of being a massive AEW mark, and then there are other fans that accuse me of being the biggest AEW hater. It's funny. Well, I'll offend someone with this. Jon Moxley's the most boring wrestler in AEW. He bores the shit out of me. His whole act. And it's not arguing. He just bores the hell out of me. And the first hour and 15 or so of this show, not perfect. There were things I didn't love, and there were things I loved. It was great. And then the Elite and this last match, I fucking hated. And those are my closing thoughts.
I just don't understand what people are looking at when they look at a match like Moxley and Suzuki and think, wow, it's like, yes, if you had Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle and you were able to put them on the ball field again, but they're still 90 years old, or they're reanimated corpses and they're falling all over themselves trying to run. Would that be an enjoyable experience? Do you want to see the legends like that? I don't know what they were looking at here, and I don't know what they're trying to do. And if New Japan wants to be their partner, is there any wrestlers in New Japan that are under the age of 50 that they might send over that would have a different kind of match with Moxley than the same kind of match he has every single time he gets in the ring? Those are questions that I ask.
I don't want to see Mox. Whatever. They're going to keep doing this because he has a New Japan deal, but I'm tired of Moxley. He's such a boring fucking wrestler.
Him and the Bucks record a match and then just play it every week, because it's going to be the same thing. They never change. Anyway, speaking of changing, don't go changing to try and please me. Just come back for the drive-thru next week and the experience next weekend, and we will talk about this some more. I hope I was suitably positive enough today, because this was several segments of this were one of the better AEW television programs they've done. It's gonna be interesting. WWE self-inflicted wounds, almost a fucking near suicide attempt at this point, it looks like, running everybody off to the waiting arms of AEW, who are getting better just because of their adding talent. And this is now a horse race, and we shall see what happens.
And we'll have to do it on the drive-thru because we are done for today, but we didn't even talk about Triple H.
Oh, my God, we forgot about him. Well, get well, Triple H, because you've had a stressful few weeks. We will do that on the drive-thru. So the quicker we get out of here, the quicker we'll be back with the drive-thru. Folks, until next week, for Brian and all of the great talent that we've just slandered, thank you. Fuck you. Bye-bye, everybody.